everybody. I'm Tim Wilbanks. I'm the Southern District Chair for the Wisconsin Honey Producers. Glad to see everybody here. We're going to be a little bit tight this morning, so as more people come in, open up your lap or have them squeeze in. We'll have to do the other side of the table. We'll get nice and cozy, okay? Can everybody hear me fine in the back? What? Yep. Don't start. Okay, so you're not getting one of these. I was just about to make the announcement that we have some gift certificates to hand out. And since nobody paid to get in, and the gift certificates are worth $10, I'm just thinking anybody wants to throw $8 or $9 at me, I'll just hand you one, right? We'll talk about that in a minute. But before we get started, we're going to turn and say the pledge to the flag to start it the right way. Everybody stand. Back in the room. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. So this is our spring meeting. So we've got a couple of really good speakers for you today. And we're going to start off in the first 30 minutes or so recognizing some organizations, telling you a little bit about those. And first and foremost, if you are a vendor or if you have something to sell, we're going to give you a chance to stand up, introduce yourself, make your face known. We have a table in the back when you walk in, so if you have any literature or information, you can put it on that table. Honey Beware up in Greenville donated the gift certificates, and they have some catalogs. And so going back to those gift certificates, kind of what I'm thinking we'll do is whoever asks really good questions to the speakers today, we'll just let the speaker decide, hey, that was a great question, hand you a gift certificate. So that way you're encouraged to ask good questions. If you ask a dumb question, then they have the right to revoke your privilege of earning it. But we're going to do that in a few minutes. We did have the Wisconsin Honey Queen, Sydney Paulsrud, was going to be here and talk to you. She emailed me late last night and said because of the weather she wasn't going to be able to make it. She had a long drive. So sorry to say I'm as pretty as it gets for now until Anna gets up here later on. It's going to get much better, okay? So we get to miss out on having Sydney, but Sydney Paulsrud is our new 2019 Wisconsin Honey Queen. If you did not know, our 2018 Queen, Hannah Jostrom, was elected as the American Honey Queen. So we have quite a long line of being represented, the Wisconsin side represented at the national level with Honey Queen. So we kept that going this year. So keep them in your thoughts. They do a lot of traveling, a lot of promoting. Okay. With that being said, this is a Wisconsin Honey Producers meeting. How many of you, and you're not in trouble, but how many of you are members? Maybe you haven't gotten up to date on your dues, but you are members of the Wisconsin Honey Producers. Please raise your hand. All right, good. How many are not? Raise your hand. Okay, it's fine for you to be here. See me afterwards. I just need $20 from you. And no, I'm kidding. We are going to pass around some pamphlets, some membership pamphlets. Tells you a little bit about our organization. And I'll start these, and I'm going to have our president, Pegorsch, come up right now and just introduce himself and tell you a little bit about the organization.
I'm Ken Pegorsch, local Patrick area, north of here where we have a lot of stores, winter. I'm really enthusiastic about this. I'm enthusiastic about all beekeeping organizations. They all serve a purpose, whether it's the county organizations, which are the first place any beekeeper should think about joining, the state organization to the American Beekeeping Federation. Every organization has a community of beekeepers that's just great to be a part of. As far as Wisconsin honey producers go, I really encourage you to grab a brochure or grab a sign-up sheet and sign up. It's $10 for first-time members, $29 a year for renewing members. But the benefits you get are great. Just being a part of the community is worth it. But we have Badger Bee, which is one of the best publications in all the United States for state organizations. Tracy Malter, our editor, puts together a great Badger Bee every month. We get email to you or mail to you. We have the spring meetings, we have the summer meetings, which this year is in Red Granite. Next year we're going to have it in Wisconsin Rapids. It's turning into kind of a 2-day meeting now. We're going to have a Friday night social with Beekeepers and then a Saturday meeting. The state fair, if you've ever been to the state fair and seen the honey booth there, as a member of the Wisconsin Honey Producers, one of the things that I really enjoy doing is going down to the state fair and working down there. If you like talking about bees or being around bee talk, it's a lot of fun. You go out there for a day and you talk to the public. The public is so interested in bees and honey. And as beekeepers, you get a chance to kind of educate the public. You'll go home hoarse after the day of talking all day long with people, especially if you're sitting on the observation beehive. We have one beekeeper from Oak County who works on every year, and that's his job, is sitting on the observation beehive. And every year, he goes home with us and he cannot talk. So it's a lot of fun to go to the state fair. And of course, the highlight of the year is our annual convention. This next year will be in Fond du Lac, which is very convenient for the Southern District. We're getting some great speakers in for this. Jamie Ellis, the scheduling comes from the University of Florida, and John Miller, who's a large beekeeper from Southwest plant, coming and speaking. And if you don't know John Miller, he's quite a guy. One of the best books I've ever read and reread is called Beekeeper's Lament. It's about bees and honey in all aspects, from small to large. I really recommend reading it. As a beekeeper, you'll enjoy it. But again, getting back to this community, as a part of the Wisconsin Honey Producers, please think about joining. At least try it out for a year and get involved. The more you get involved, the more you're going to get out of it. The more beekeepers you're going to meet from around the state, the more you're going to learn about bees and honey. It's a lot of fun. I can't say enough about it.
Thank you, Kent. With that being said, we also have the president of the Illinois State Beekeepers here with us today. Corky, where's Corky? Come up, Corky. Corky's going to share with you a little bit about what's going on just over the border, just south of us. And he's going to make an announcement about their summer meeting. So, Corky Schnadtt, Illinois State Beekeepers.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. This year, the summer meeting, it goes across the state in different locations. This year, it's in extreme northern Illinois, so it's not very far away at all. In Crystal Lake, it's about an hour from here. It's going to be a 2-day event, members only on Friday. It's going to be a series of workshops. We're going to have Keith Delaplane, Jerry Hayes, Jim and Karen Belli, and one of our chief apiary inspectors do 3-hour workshops, and we're going to limit it to just 20 people per workshop. It's really going to be a neat little thing, and it's a whopping $10 for that. That's members only, so you still have time to join if you like. The Saturday meeting is our traditional public meeting. We're going to have Dr. Delaplane again, Jerry Hayes, and several other people speaking. It'll be an all-day affair. You get lunch for $10. It's going to be at the McHenry County College. Just like I said, just down the road from there. And it's going to be June 7th and 8th, the Friday and Saturday. Does anybody have any questions? Think of? Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Corky. Okay, we also have several, you're kind of fortunate this year, Illinois and Wisconsin, we have a lot of board members that live in this area that are part of the American Beekeeping Federation. Myself, Kent, Jim Belli. So I'm going to have Jim stand up and tell you a little bit about the American Beekeeping Federation and a very close to home event that's coming up next January. Jim Belli.
That was fantastic, guys. Really, the American Beekeeping Federation, the board, it's really mostly all Wisconsin honey producers. I'm a member. Tim, Ken, Anna, Tim May rather. We're all members of this organization. So if you ever wonder how well Wisconsin is represented nationally, that is the one. But next year, January, this will never happen again. I assure you, it's going to be in Schaumburg. Normally, we try, the American Beekeeping Federation moves its annual conference and trade show across the country, East, Midwest, West Coast. Next year, it's going to be in the Midwest, and it will be held in Schaumburg in January. I really strongly, like everybody else, strongly recommend you join the ABF. That is their national voice. This year, ABF was able to eliminate the need for added honey labeling on a single product like we have with the ABF and the maple syrup industry that really spearheaded that.
They added sugar.
Added sugar.
Added to your product. And they killed that. Finished.
Yeah, as Bill said, the other bitty big, and you sometimes you don't think this infection, but it was had to do with regulations on trucking. They were able to go a lot on that one. And that really will help reduce the cost of packages coming from California or Georgia up to this area. Again, like I said, I strongly recommend you join ABF. Convention will be in January next year in Schaumburg. That's a 4-day convention. It's really a great time. So,
Thanks, Jim.
you bet.
So just to elaborate on that a little bit, it is very rare, and it probably won't happen again that we get that convention this close. Okay, normally you have to travel somewhere sunny and warm, which is a big inconvenience during January, right? Yeah, we usually like that, but hey, it's not going to be sunny and warm. Maybe it will be, but it's going to be close, and it's indoors. So one of the things that I highly encourage about the ABF meeting is that it is a great chance for you to network. Okay, to give you a quick example. 3 years ago, I believe it was, or 4 years ago, we had it in Jacksonville. I met a beekeeper that was sitting, it was after dinner in the bar area, he was sitting there, he had on a Georgia Bulldogs hat. I'm originally from Georgia, so I introduced myself. He was there, he had 2 beehives. He was just sitting there, just trying to meet people, okay? Now, 4 years later, he has a business. He runs about 250, 300 colonies, okay? He just showed up. He wanted to meet people. He met people. Nobody, from the biggest commercial guys in this country to other hobbyists, they're going to talk with you. Nobody has secrets. They love bragging or telling you their sad story. And so you get to learn. And they'll give you your phone number. And it is amazing the connections you will make with some of the big names in the industry. And then you'll find people just in your own neighborhood you didn't even know kept bees. So great opportunity to network. And to elaborate further on the 2 things that the ABF helped do for us as beekeepers the past few years was that added sugar labeling. Many of you probably don't realize this, but there was a push that we were going to have to put an added sugars line on our honey labels, okay? Now, it would have been 0, but it would have been a confusing thing for the consumer. Because then they're looking and saying, well, why would honey have added sugars in it? Well, it doesn't, right? It's pure honey. But they were making us do that, and so from a marketing and confusion standpoint, we just thought this is a bad idea. So the maple syrup industry, honey industry, ABF was real big in this, got that dropped, and that was a benefit to all of us as beekeepers and honey producers. Secondly, some of the DOT hour log rules, okay? Now, obviously those are for the safety of all, but in the ag industry, farmers most of the time are exempt during harvest season with having to follow and keep these log books and all, because it's harvest season. You're doing things where you have to get the grain to the market and that kind of thing. Same thing with bees. When bees are being trucked across the country, whether you're sending your hives for pollination to California or whether you're getting package bees or nukes shipped in, those laws affect the pricing of trucking, because now instead of 1 driver, it take 2 drivers to keep that rig. So we made some big headway there as well. So you can thank the ABF for having a big part in both of those changes for the positive for beekeepers. So highly encourage you to join. Now, we want to take a few minutes and recognize our local club. So the way we're going to do this is if you have a club that is within, well, let me back up before I even do that. How many of you here are considered hobbyists? You have just a handful of hives, you're a backyard beekeeper, you would consider yourself a hobbyist, you do hives, you do it in your spare time. Raise your hand. All right, so that's the majority of it. How many of you would consider yourselves to be maybe a sideliner? Hey, yeah, I'm kind of a hobbyist, but I also have a business. I make honey or beeswax or a product from the bees, and I sell it, and I derive some income from that. So you would consider yourself a sideliner beekeeper. Raise your hand. Okay, good. Now, taking it a step above, how many of you are even a little bigger than that? Maybe you got enough hives that you pull together with other beekeepers and you send them for pollination, or you sell bees off your operation, or you're selling honey in the barrel, like small commercial or commercial beekeeper. Raise your hand. Okay, so we got a couple here for that. Okay, so keep that in mind, okay? With that, whether you're sideliner, small commercial, and whether you know some other commercial guys, the Bee Informed Partnership is an organization that's doing a lot to help beekeepers, especially in the fight against Varroa mites. Beekeepers are, what are the next best treatment tactics? What are the best testing methods? How do I know what I've got? And it's not just Varroa, other things as well. Viruses, Nosema, those kind of things. So the Bee Informed Partnership has tech transfer teams where they have technicians out in the field that are helpful to you as beekeepers, okay? They can come in and they can help assist you in determining what's going on, the health or not so healthy status of your bees. What can we do about it? What do we need to do next? So Dan wins. Dan, if you'd stand up. Dan is here today. Dan's over in Michigan now, but I think we'll be transferring over to Wisconsin or helping monitor Wisconsin. So Dan, come up and tell us a little bit about yourself and about the Bee Informed Partnership Tech Transfer Team.
Dan Wines, based out of Michigan State University. Currently, I was in Oregon, working with beekeepers in the Northwest. Background is as a commercial beekeeper, kind of now Bee Informed Tech Transfer Team. Kind of like 1 foot in science and 1 foot in industry, kind of the conduit in between. So as Tim said, we work with commercial beekeepers largely, trying to help them get some data, kind of evaluate and improve management practices, monitor colony health. So we're expanding the program into Wisconsin this year. My coworker Garrett out in Minnesota lab was this week last year here, so we're going to be kind of covering the area. But also knowing that a lot of which hands went up for which questions. Be Informed, we're kind of a national outfit. There's different levels that you can be involved in. One, anybody through the website, which is just beeinformed.org. There's a ton of information there. We run the National Management Loss Survey for the last 9-10 years now. There's a Data Explorer. There's just a ton of information that comes in from all around the country. The national loss statistics. Typically, when you see an article in the press about honeybees and where they're at and losses, that information comes from the annual survey of national loss rates. But you can really get in and dive into that data locally and find out what's going on around you. Also, another way you can participate is the Sentinel Apiary program. I'll leave some information on the table about that, but that's kind of a way for beekeepers to, you take your own samples, but it goes to the lab, and you can get kind of metrics on colony health, Varroa, Nosema, but also putting it into context. A lot of times you see your own bees, or if you're fairly new to it, or you don't see other bees, you don't have a lot of sense of what those numbers mean. So we try to provide that information, and again, it's all coming from a place of helping beekeepers make more informed management decisions, and that being better for their bees. So I'm here, appreciate the chance to let you know who I am and come and talk to me. I'd like to tell you more.
Thanks, Dan. So that's beeinformed.org. That's the website if you want to write that down. And then back it up, the American Beekeeping Federation, it's kind of a confusing one. It's abfnet.org. So abfnet.org. Okay? Wisconsin Honey Producers, it's WI Honey, so abbreviation for Wisconsin, wihoney.org. Just so you can write those down if you don't get a pamphlet. Okay, now it's time to recognize the local club. So knowing what we've got in terms of beekeeper demographics, what I want to do is go around the room, and if you are here and you're a part of a local club, maybe you're a board member or an officer, I want you to stand up, say what club you represent, say where you meet, when you meet, so that there are people here that are looking to join other clubs or be a part of other clubs close to them. They know what opportunities exist. So we'll just start and just jump up and go, and we'll bounce around the room. So, all right, Tim, we'll start with Tim right here in the front.
Yeah. Tim Hamilton, Racine Kenosha, which meets on the corner of 45 and 50. We meet the first Wednesday of every month at 7 o'clock, and we have a early lesson for beginning beekeepers, and then we have our regular meetings.
Okay. Anybody else on this side?
Hi everyone, I'm Stephanie and I'm part of the Walworth County Beekeepers Club. We meet on the third Tuesday of each month at 7 o'clock, and we've recently changed our location due to some scheduling conflicts, so we are now meeting at the Gateway Technical College campus in Elkhorn on County Road H.
Okay, thank you. Scott?
Scott Wagner, Rock County Beekeepers Association. We meet at Fulton Township, which is just up the road here just a little bit. Second Sunday of every month except for January and August. It's cold in January and you should be harvesting in August.
Anybody else on that side? Yep.
Dodge Jefferson Bee Association, we at St. Michael's Church in Houstonsburg, right on Highway R. Meetings at 1 o'clock, we have a potluck starting and a 2 o'clock regular meeting.
Okay, so that was the Dodge Jefferson Beekeepers. Anybody else on this side? Yep.
I'm Rick Marty with Mad City Bees on Madison. We meet every first Tuesday of every month at various locations, libraries mostly, and pretty uniform, just sit around and chat. We do great with speakers, no dues, just hanging out, having a good time.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Anybody here in the middle? Okay, anybody on this side? Brett?
Brett Perry, Milwaukee Waukesha Beekeepers Association. We meet first Monday of the month, usually. It's on our website, MW Beekeepers. Yeah, we're just maybe a 125 person club, but been around for a few years and kind of serve those two counties. But standard meetings, talk about bees. Christmas party, we drink mead. So.
What's your location?
We're in the Brookfield Public Library.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Lynette Tom, Ozaukee, Washington Beekeepers. We meet on Highway 60 at Polk, second Monday of the month. Don Bill was in charge, but knee surgery he just had, so wish him well. And it's just we do have a Christmas party also. Just a bunch of people, and if you need help, we'll have send somebody out to help you.
Anybody else on this side? Marshall? Yeah, talk about you. Yeah, even if you're just over into the Illinois side. Yeah.
John Leibner with the Northern Illinois Beekeepers. We meet the second Friday of every month in the Farm Bureau building in Woodstock, Illinois. It's a nice, intimate kind of venue. Probably holds 75 people, and we have maybe 120 there. So it's good time. We bring speakers in periodically and have a lot of inter-discussions within the group. Yeah, come early if you want to see.
Otherwise, you'll be holding up the wall, right?
Yeah.
Yep, Kent?
I just want to invite the county organizations to get a listing on the Wisconsin Honey Producers website. So if you not already on there, send me an email or message through the website, and we'll be glad to put your Facebook page, your web page on there, because I'm getting constantly people looking for county organizations to join, even in Illinois, for our southern people, we even put Illinois people on there.
Yeah, so if anybody else, Marcy?
Yeah, you are.
You guys, tell them, are there any spots available? Sold out. So, Marcy wasn't going to tell you this, but Randy Oliver's coming to Chicago, to Garfield Park, March 31st. I figured that was sold out. Quite a nationally sought after speaker. He'll be there, so maybe in the future, keep an eye on some of the things that Garfield Park does. But go ahead and tell us a little bit about when you guys meet.
All right, so Marcel Matelski, I'm from Chicago. Garfield Park Conservatory is where I work. We meet on first Wednesdays of the month, 6 to 8 p.m. And every year, like Tim said, we host an annual bee forum. So last year we had Dr. Samuel Ramsey. This year we have Randy Oliver. In the past we had Megan Milgrave, May Berenbaum, Dr. Dennis Van Engelthorpe from Bee Informed Partnership. So if you're interested, best way is to Google Garfield Park Conservatory, get on our newsletter, it's free, and once we have speakers announced, we send out a newsletter, and then the sign-ups go out, and we can only hold about 100 people in the room, so we're in the Oliver, I mean, it's expected to be sold out. If you're interested, we have a waiting list, but there's 50 people on the waiting list already. I'm not saying you're going to get in, but doesn't hurt to try.
They bring in some really big speakers every year, once a year, and so it fills up fast, but keep them in mind. Anybody else? Any other clubs, big or small? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Dan said, we're not a local club, we're from La Crosse, Wisconsin, and we meet on the third Tuesday of every month.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I'm Bob Wood in Sauk, Columbia County, Baraboo Portage area. We meet on the third Tuesday of each month at the North Shore Restaurant out by Devil's Lake.
Okay, great. Is that everybody? All right, so if you saw somebody stand up who mentioned that they are close to you and you want more information, just get them during a break or at lunch, make them buy you pizza, and maybe you can join their club at a discount, okay? So speaking of lunch, okay, so here's what we're going to do. It's not time yet. We have two speakers. But at roughly noon, maybe noon 30, we're going to have pizza brought in, and it's going to be pizza by the slice, $1 a slice. We have water and pop, $1 for a drink. So we'll keep it real simple. We should have plenty. I'm going to get a head count here in just a minute. Make sure if we need to order a few more, we will. So that'll come in. There will be cheese, pepperoni, and sausage pizza. Sorry if you're a veggie person. You just have to pick it off, I guess. But you know, it's a beekeepers meeting, so we're just kind of keeping it. You know, we don't have meat and potatoes. We got pizza instead. So let's keep it simple. But hopefully that'll be good, and then we'll have about 45 minutes for that. We'll have the afternoon stuff. We'll keep it short and get you out of here. But network, okay? During lunch, during the breaks, I want you to take an opportunity to meet people around you, find out who they are. And one of the big reasons that I am a big believer in networking locally is when it comes to treating for Varroa, okay? You'll hear in Anna's talk, it helps so much to know who has bees around you, what they're doing, what they're not doing, when they're doing it. Because growing up in a commercial operation and working with a lot of commercial operations now, it's all about communicating. Don't keep secrets. Don't hide things. Talk to one another. Community treatments, meaning time-wise and location-wise, are very, very helpful in our battle against Varroa. So keep that in mind. Get to know people around you. Find out, you know, share information where your bees are. Because in some instances, your bees may be working the same forage plants, okay? So keep that in mind. That's what this is all about. Now, a couple more housekeeping things before we get started. We're a little ahead of schedule since Sydney wasn't here with us today. But restrooms are in the hallway just as you came in the building, okay? Be careful as you get down the hall. The floors are tile, the floors are wet. It was a very limited mat there, so it's going to be wet, so be careful. We don't want any slips and falls, but that's where the restrooms are. There's coffee in the back, and then, like I said, we'll have lunch around noontime. If you need anything, let us know. Anybody else got any other announcements before we get started with our first speaker? Anything that's for the good of beekeeping in the group here? All right. What's that? Yeah. Hey, thank you. Yeah, that's a good courteous thing to do. You got your cell phone on. This is going to be recorded, and so sound's going to be a little challenging. If you don't mind, silence your cell phones. If you do get a call and have to take it, you're notified. Please step out, come out the front or the back. Good point. All right, so I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Anna Heck. She's formerly of the University of Minnesota Bee Squad up at the University of Minnesota Bee Lab, and did a lot of work there. She has recently joined Michigan State University, their Department of Entomology. She's in the Michigan Pollinator Initiative Program working with Megan Milbert. And so Anna has agreed to come share with us about getting a plan against Varroa in your apiary. So with that, come on up, Anna, and we'll give our full attention to you.
Awesome, thanks everyone, I'm happy to be here. Can you hear me okay in the back? Great, so give me a hand wave if at some point you can't hear me or understand me. So like Tim said, I'm Anna Heck. I just switched in January from the University of Minnesota Bee Lab to Michigan State. I got my start in beekeeping in Nicaragua. After college, I wanted to live in a Spanish-speaking country for a couple of years. I had studied abroad and was looking for a longer experience. So I worked in Nicaragua with a local nonprofit organization in the capital, and I worked with an organization that did rural development. And I had this opportunity to work with beekeepers, and I just like, all of you kind of know what it feels like to fall in love with bees. So this is where I first got started. We were working with Africanized bees. Most of the time my job was just to be the smoker, because having someone smoke the bees is kind of like a full-time beekeeping job in the garden sometimes, because those bees are Africanized and more defensive. And then I also worked with a cooperative of beekeepers, mostly women, who were using beekeeping as a way to supplement their household income. A couple of pictures of beekeeping in Nicaragua. So this is us, we had pulled some honey. We used, those are all bees full of honey. What's not pictured is that we were all kind of like standing on the back bunker and getting a ride too. Don't tell my mom. So I moved back home to Minnesota after living in Nicaragua for a couple of years, and I tried to get involved with the University of Minnesota. I took their class about beekeeping in northern climates and realized beekeeping in the northern climate was way different than what I had learned. I asked the Bee Lab if I could volunteer with them. They said no, they don't take volunteers. But then a couple of months later, they said, hey, we're hiring part-time for someone. And that worked out perfectly for me because I was starting a graduate program in public policy. So I was able to work with the University of Minnesota and learn beekeeping in Minnesota while being in school. So when I started, we were at our old honey house. It was basically, here's like kind of the demolition pictures of it, but it's basically just a big garage. It was condemned by the university for extracting honey, so our honey house we weren't allowed to use for extracting honey because the standards were not up to code. But then luckily we got this beautiful new bee lab at the university. So I got to kind of see both sides of the bee lab in Minnesota. I work with the Bee Squad, which is the extension and outreach arm of the University of Minnesota Bee Lab. So Marla Spivak, who's a top honeybee researcher, started the Bee Squad because she knew that there was a lot of interest from the public and from small-scale beekeepers, and she wanted to provide more outreach and extension with them. One of our programs was a program where customers hired us to manage colonies on their property. So that's like an awesome gig, right? Like you don't have to invest in all these bees and hives, right? Someone else buys the bees and the hives and then they pay you to go take care of the bees. So we have bees in about 100 locations. About a third were companies and then 2/3 were families. So a lot of my job was just going from place to place and taking care of colonies. And that was really cool because I could, for the whole like metro area, we could really get a sense of trends in the area, and then we talk with the beekeeper and say, oh, you're in the city? Yeah, we noticed that this year the honey nectar flow was a little early there. So it gave us a huge big picture of bees in the Twin Cities area. And then our other programs were a lot of working with the groups in the public. So we had a pollinator ambassador program where we would work with high school students and train them to do pollinator outreach. We have a program where we work with veterans and teach them how to do beekeeping or provide in-kind experiences. And then we have some habitat kind of projects too. I can do a whole talk on Minnesota, but I'm up to Michigan now. So the rooftop beekeeping, a lot of urban beekeeping. I'm going to brag a little bit because this is really cool. Who here knows that the rusty patch bumblebee is extinct? Or sorry, endangered, an endangered species list. So last summer it was my goal to find a rusty patch bumblebee. We have been checking the site. We've been doing bumblebee surveys for 4 years. What we do is we go around with these little Tupperware containers. We get the bumblebees right off the flowers, put them on ice, bring it to an expert who's able to identify the bumblebee as species. And then once the bee warms up, it's able to fly away. We'll dot it with the dot of the bee before it flies away so we don't keep catching the same exact bee, right? So anyway, we got graphic designer would have done with the slide. So basically, you can see that the Varroa mite is driving the bee crisis. Right. So a lot of times in entomology, so study of insects, when we talk about pest management, we take an integrated pest management approach. And what integrated pest management tries to do is say, okay, we know we have to intervene and control pests, but we want to also at the same time limit the number of pesticides that we're using. We don't want to use pesticides or chemicals unnecessarily, right? We only want to use them if they're necessary, so we want to be really strategic about when we're intervening instead of just kind of a blanket approach of chemicals. And this strategy is used a lot in crop production. A lot of university extension programs have integrated management programs so that when they're working with growers, they're able to say, okay, if you have a pest, let's talk about what your level of damage is. Like a little bit of damage is okay. We know this is economic, so we can't allow for too much damage. So really being strategic about when we intervene. So it's based on prevention, monitor, and control. And we want to minimize chemical exposure not only for the crop, but also for human safety. So an integrated management pesticide program will come up with a monitoring program so that you're looking for levels of pests and then also establish guidelines for making an intervention. So the questions that we'll ask when we come up with our integrated pest management for Varroa are, what should we know about Varroa? Where do we see Varroa? When do we see Varroa? When should control begin? And what management options can we consider? So we're going to start off with the first question about just general information about Varroa. Here's the Varroa mite. You can see it on the abdomen of the bee here. And remember, it's really big in comparison to the size of the bee, right? So if people say it'd be like having a frisbee or a dinner plate on you. Most of our honeybees are not able to get that Varroa mite off of themselves. There are some bees, we'll talk about them a little bit later, that are better at getting the mites off themselves. But for the most part, that Varroa mite is there on their abdomen and sometimes their thorax. And it's really hard for the bees to get off themselves. So the mites are able to detect larvae that are about to be capped. And so when they, so they'll be looking for, they are able to sense that the larvae, that stage of the bee. So they'll jump into the cell right before it's capped. And then the female will lay some eggs. This photo here has some of the younger Varroa. They're really hard to see, but there's a male and then several female. And then those adults, so those new females will, and the older female too, will emerge on the bee. So here the photo is a little bit bigger. So we have the female, a male, and then some more female diners. So Varroa are happily diploid. Anyone know that word? It's the same, like honeybees are too. It means that the females have two sets of genes and the males don't. But the female will lay, the female lays the male and then some females. Those offspring mate with each other. So it's small inbreeding, and then unless there's two mites in the cell, and then the newly mated emerge on the honeybee. So Varroa is a big issue. It's not native to our honeybees. It's native to the Asiatic honeybees. And then in 1960, there was a colony of our European honeybees, Apis mellifera, that were brought to China and within close contact of the Asiatic honeybee, Apis cerani. And then that's when the Varroa transferred to Apis mellifera. We didn't have Varroa in the United States until 1987, when Varroa was found in Wisconsin and Florida. So if you talk to beekeepers who have been doing beekeeping for a while, they'll remember what it was like to keep bees before Varroa. And it sounds really magical and awesome. I really wish we, it's been a huge change in how we manage our bees. Before it was a lot more hands-off, and now beekeepers are constantly just trying to keep their Varroa levels under control. So at the time it was introduced, there was only one approved treatment for Varroa, which was Belli. And so in the beginning it wasn't that bad from what I hear here. There were some Varroa was introduced, sometimes the Varroa is introduced, it doesn't kill bees right away. The big problem with Varroa is that it's spreading viruses from honeybee, the Varroa can reproduce in drone brood or in worker brood. So that gives this mite a lot more opportunity to really take over. All right, so as I mentioned, the Varroa mites are able to recognize the function and age of the worker bees. They prefer older nurse bees, and those older nurse bees, remember, are in the hive, they're feeding the larvae, and so if you think about it, this gives the mites a really good opportunity to be very close to those larval cells right before those larval cells are capped, right? Because they're on those adult bees and then that are feeding the larvae. And they're obligate parasites, so that just means that Varroa can't live outside of the hive. They totally depend on honeybee colonies for their survival. Maybe a little bit, sometimes in labs they're able to get them to live a little bit, but for the most part, they can't live out in the wild. So Varroa by itself is bad, right? They affect the immune systems of bees, they reduce lifespan, and they can lead to colony kind of death and collapse. But what really is hard are the viruses that they're spreading. We talk about Varroa a lot as like a dirty needle, right? They're in the colony, they're spreading viruses between the bees in that colony, and then these mites are also spreading viruses between different colonies in different yards. So the viruses can also affect the immune systems of the bees, and they make the bees more susceptible to other issues. So more, if your bees are faced with pesticides, or if there's not awesome forage, or there's different other issues, those viruses make the bees more susceptible. And they also can lead to colony collapse at any time of the year. We see most of our colony losses that are Varroa and virus related in the fall or winter, but they can happen at other points of the year as well. So the way that you manage your colonies can affect your entire beekeeping area. And so honeybees that are collapsing from a mite infestation can be a source of mites transferring to healthy colonies. There's a paper that talks a lot about the autumn invasion of Varroa, so looking at autumn and how mite levels can spike because mites are moving from one colony to another. There's another paper that looked at population models of Varroa mites and showed that, okay, just from this reproduction of mites, we can't explain how the numbers got so high. So that means that mites are coming in from other colonies. And they also were able to look at bees leaving and bees returning, and the bees leaving into this healthy colony had fewer mites than the bees that were returning. So you can see that bees were coming in with mites. So for a while I was a little bit confused because I thought, okay, well we know mites prefer the younger nurse bees, so then how are these mites spreading from colony to colony, right? And one thing that happens is that at low distribution levels of Varroa mites, the Varroa prefer those younger nurse bees. And they are using the chemical profile of the younger nurse bees to identify them and prefer them. But when Varroa levels really increase, then the chemical profiles of the nurse bees and the older bees overlap. So then at that point, the Varroa don't have a preference. So they'll be on the younger nurse bees and on the older bees. And those older bees are the foragers, and they're the ones going out and collecting nectar. And so this horizontal transmission is what we call it, when mites go from one colony to another. And this can happen in a few different ways. So there are data that show that if you have a sick yard with a lot of Varroa mites, or sick colony with a lot of Varroa, those bees will go to other colonies. So they have the Varroa on them, and they'll disperse. Another thing is that if your colony is really sick, so say you have a really healthy colony, right? And you have done an awesome job keeping your Varroa mite levels low. In the fall, your bees might be robbing other colonies, and the colonies that they're going to be successful robbing are those colonies that are sick with mites and not able to defend their honey very well. So even if you have really clean bees, the bees might be entering kind of mite bomb or what we call super infested colonies and coming back with mites. Okay, I'm just like calming everyone out, right? Sorry. It's like a more fun topic next year. So where do we see Varroa? So pretty much everywhere. Like it's not, we have Varroa in every colony now. It's not like people think, oh, sometimes like, oh, my colony doesn't have Varroa. And it's like that's maybe you're the person in these states that doesn't have Varroa, but that's our So Dan wanted to talk a little bit about the Informed Partnership data. You can go on beinformed.org and look at the different data and learn from it. But what we see is that backyard beekeepers with a lot more colonies that are backyard beekeepers, usually more colonies that are commercial. So last year, backyard beekeepers lost about 45% of their colonies. And that's a huge loss. And this is what we expect. We expect that people who are commercial beekeepers and do it for a living and professionally and have decades of experience are going to know how to keep their colonies alive. I think sometimes there's this myth that, oh, you know, like because I'm a backyard beekeeper, that I'm going to somehow save my bees. But our backyard beekeepers are really susceptible to losing their colonies. All right. So you can see Varroa, if your eyesight's pretty good, you can see the Varroa mites because they are pretty big. But you only see Varroa normally when mites are very high. And again, so colonies that have mites will often be like your safer colonies. Sometimes they're colonies that make a lot of honey, they build up really big, strong, healthy colonies are the ones that are really susceptible to death because there's so much food in that colony that there's so much opportunity for mites to reproduce. And it's really common for us to hear about colonies that are, you know, like awesome, healthy, strong, honey-producing colonies in the summer that die in the fall from mites. Can you see the mite? So it's kind of cheating because we made the photo small, so it's harder to see. But there is a mite here. It's actually on a bee that has deformed wings. So it's different. Even though you can see mites with the naked eye, it's difficult to see them. Oftentimes they're in between the abdomen segments and on the underside of the bee. And so a lot of times we'll talk to people and they'll be like, oh, I don't have Varroa because I didn't see any. And normally you're only going to start seeing Varroa if those mite levels are really high. For people that see a lot of colonies, if you start seeing mites on bees, that's kind of like a little bit of a panic, like I need to do a mite test now because if I'm seeing mites, that means the mite levels are already much higher than where I want them to be. So the Varroa reproduce in worker brood or drone brood. They do prefer to reproduce in the drone brood. They prefer that about 8 to 10 times more. And if you think about drone brood, drones take longer to develop, so it also provides more time for the Varroa mites to lay eggs and more adults can emerge out of the drone brood than out of the worker brood. But also we think about this as an opportunity for control. Like, okay, we know that the mites prefer the drone brood, so that we'll talk about interventions, but that provides some help for us. Megan Hildgrath, who's at Michigan State, came out with an article. It's online, you can read it, has photos, but it's called Why Do My Bees Die? And it talks about what Varroa looks like. So a few different trends of colonies that die from Varroa or viruses are that it was big and looked healthy in the fall or in the summer. It had a lot of honey and looked in the hive. So if you have a colony that dies that has a lot of honey, that means that it didn't start, right? Like, unless it's just kind of somehow got separated from the honey and it couldn't move to honey in the cold temperatures. Oftentimes when colonies die from Varroa viruses, they're pretty small. Oftentimes there aren't very many bees on the bottom board. Sometimes you'll see really spotty brood and bees kind of just emerging with their tongue sticking out. You'll see white spots stuck to the cell ceiling. I'll show you photos of those in a minute, but that's the mite poop that you can actually see. And then those are kind of signs of a whole collapse of death by Varroa. So oftentimes for this time of year, when people say, hey, our bees died, I don't know why, we'll ask them those questions because that's pretty common. Some other signs of a pretty big infestation of Varroa and viruses are deformed wing viruses. So deformed wing virus is kind of misnamed, unfortunately. Like it's in most of our colonies, and a lot of bees have deformed wing virus, even if they don't have deformed wings. But the younger bees that have a pretty high load of deformed wings will emerge with deformed wings. They're stubby, they don't live very long. That's a sign that you have pretty high levels of deformed wing virus in your colony, and that's a virus that's spread by Varroa. But again, it's a deformed wing virus in most of our colonies, even if we don't see those deformed wings. Another thing is called parasitic mite syndrome or brood virus syndrome. There's a lot of different names because Marla Sudik of the Minnesota Bee Lab doesn't like that the acronym for parasitic mite syndrome is PMS, so she like tried to change the name, but she keeps like changing the name that she changes it to. So it's anyway, there's a few different names going on there. You can just like choose your favorite. I think virus syndrome is another one, but not everyone will maybe know what you're talking about if you use that acronym. But basically, it just means that we don't know exactly what's causing this, but when there's huge levels of mites in the colony, we'll see a lot of brood damage. So lots of viruses, issues in the brood just aren't developing well. Oftentimes the brood will kind of look like they're melted in the cells. They're not healthy, and you'll see a lot of like uncapping too. You might see some shoot down brood, so that's when they're at the pupal stage and the bees are starting to clean out those pupae because there's disease. It doesn't, shoot down brood isn't necessarily from Varroa mites and viruses, but it can be. So, and then I told you to show you the cracks or the coat. So this is my coat. This is a pretty sick colony. But if you take a frame and you hold it down like this and you look at the ceilings of the cells, and you have good lighting, you'll be able to see the white poop on the cell ceiling. And the bees clean it out. So normally if you're seeing this mite poop, it means that you have pretty high mite levels. And I think it looks like just like a little dab of white up in that ceiling of the cell. So that's kind of another just like tool for you. You'll be monitoring your Varroa levels, but it's also not a bad idea to check and see if you're seeing this mite poop. When do we see Varroa? So this is the population model for mice in bees. So the yellow line here is bees, and then the red line is mice, and this is through January through to December, so throughout the year. So what we see is that bees population starts out in the winter, strength pretty low, it grows in the summer, and then goes back down in the fall. For bees, the mites cycle pretty much follows that cycle, but a little bit behind. And remember, those mites are reproducing in the brood. So as the honeybee colony grows in the brood, the mites are also reproducing. And when we really kind of see high levels of mites are August, September, October, and that's because we also have a proportion thing going on too, right? We have all these bees and then all these mites, and then the bee population drops. You still have a lot of mites being produced. So this chart shows bees and mites and sealed on adult bees and mites and sealed brood. So the dotted line here is mites and adult bees, and the solid line is mites and then sealed brood. So we start out the year, mites on adult bees is going to be pretty low and pretty constant, hopefully in your colonies. And then once we have more brood in our colonies, the mites and sealed brood can really start spiking. And so August, September is when you have a lot of mites in sealed brood, and then your queen is going to start laying a lot less, so then at that point you're going to have a lot more mites on adult bees, right? Because the mites aren't in the sealed brood, if their queen isn't laying, but they're all going to be on your adult bees. Who here has seen routing? Bees routing? Oh yeah, it's kind of bummer a lot of people. But that's good if you're able to recognize it, right? So when we're thinking about these populations, the spike of Varroa in the fall, one reason is because of robbing. Remember, bees are entering colonies that aren't theirs, and that's an opportunity for Varroa to switch hosts. So here's a video of some shooting ones here. It should display, but if I can't get it to go, I'll show it later on. Oh, it says media in the middle. Okay, so if you want to see what routing looks like and you haven't seen it, find me and I have my computer here and I can show you a couple short videos. But basically, some things to look for are like bees. You'll see a lot of traffic. Sometimes it's hard because there's a lot of returning foragers and you're like, is this robbing or isn't it? But the robbing bees don't really know where the entrance is, and they'll kind of dart at the hive. Oftentimes they're going to places where they can smell honey, so the cracks between the boxes they'll kind of dart at, and at the entrances. Another sign of robbing is you can look at the bottom board, and oftentimes you'll see fighting, like the bees are like literally wrestling with each other, trying to defend that hive. And so when you see robbing in the fall, that's a concern, right? Because it means that there's potential for Varroa transmission. And there's a few things you can do to stop that rotting. Like oftentimes we put a wet sheet over the hive or reduce the entrances so that bees have less space to defend. All right. So again, in this fall, that's when we see mite levels spike. Every dot in here is a Varroa mite, or with me, big dots, and that's from just a powdered sugar roll test that I'll talk about in a minute. So that's a lot of mites. For people who have done mite checks before, you can look at this and kind of freak out, right? Like that's a lot of mites in here. It's not what we want to see. All right. So Sam Ramsey out of the University of Maryland has been doing a lot of research on Varroa mites recently, and so for a while we all thought that, everyone thought that mites fed on the bee's hemolymph or the bee blood, right? And so that it's sucking this bee blood, and that's what it was feeding on. And Sam Ramsey's research shows that their mites are feeding more on the fat bodies of bees. And so the fat bodies are a lot of times on the underside of the abdomen. And this is important too because it helps us explain where the mites are and why we oftentimes just don't see them when they're at pretty low to medium levels. So here Sam looked at and quantified where mites were most often found, and most of the time it's on the underside of the abdomen, and then sometimes it is on the thorax. So a lot of times we see photos of mites on a thorax, but that's normally not where you're going to find them. And so just to remember, we have people who say like, oh, I'm just going to take a picture of my bees of the frames, and then I'll blow it up on my computer, and I'll look for mites, and that's how I'll tell if I have mites. I'm like, okay, like you have way more time than me, that's awesome. But also like that's not a good method for sampling because you're going to miss all those mites that are on the underside of the bees.
Shouldn't it be 3 times more likely on the left side than the right?
It is more likely, I forget the exact number, it is more likely on the left side. I don't think we know why. I'm trying to see if it's in this here.
Left side of the bee or left side of the hive or left side of what?
It says found preferentially on the left side of the host. I think the actual paper quantifies how often. Yeah, so maybe it is 3 times.
Well, it's 21% right?
Okay, cool. Yeah, so it is, right? So that's also interesting for us. Yes?
That's why the feces are more on the left side of the cell.
What was that?
Feces.
Oh! So the mite feces are also more on the left side of the cell when you look. I haven't noticed that. That's good to know. All right. Anyone get what we did here? No. I'm going to read it on the underside of the bus So, for the most part, like whether or not bees feed on fat bodies or hemolymph doesn't make a whole lot of difference to backyard beekeepers, right? It's still an issue that you have to control. But it does help us explain a lot of what our health issues with bees. So this photo here is taken of a summer bee on the left and a winter bee on the right. The summer bee on the left, and this is their fat bodies. So the summer bee on the left has very few fat bodies. The summer bee on the right has a ton of fat bodies. That's why it's so light there. And so fat bodies are hugely important for bees to survive the winter. And so if you have a bee that's sucking on the fat body, or sorry, not mice, but sucking on the fat bodies of your bee, that's going to really affect its ability to make it through the winter. So the difference between summer and winter bees are the individual activity, endocrine profiles, the nutrient stores, and the longevity. So we're really thinking about those winter bees and how important it is to have healthy fat bodies and bees that are really fat going into the winter. All right. So another question for integrated pest management that we want to think about is when our control should begin. So Bee Squad and lots of other groups around the country recommend testing for mites at least once per month. And you want to do that through your beekeeping season, so often that's April through October, depending on temperatures. And then you should be managing your mite levels off of your test results from doing those tests in your colonies. If you have just a few colonies, we recommend testing every single colony. If you have a lot of colonies, we recommend testing 8 colonies per yard. And depending on your scale, you'll want to do a few different yards. It's also really important to test before and after doing a treatment. So for some people, they're like, oh, I tested, I got high mite levels, and I put a treatment on, and they think they're good to go. And we really recommend that you test after the treatment too, because you want to know if that treatment was effective. Some of the treatments kind of take a little bit of time for the mites to fully die, so you might want to test 2 or 3 weeks after treatment. But testing frequently helps you understand where your mite levels were and if you see a spike or not. And you want to really pay attention in the late summer and the fall. One way to monitor for mites is through a powdered sugar roll test. I forgot my picture was in there, but we were really excited when we found the mite check kit for it's kind of new. So you can build your own powdered sugar roll test at home. It's pretty easy. The hardest part is finding the 8mm wire mesh size. That's kind of perfect for this test. But if you like hands-on craft projects, make your own kit. It's like a mason jar and some water. It's online at the University of Minnesota Bee Lab's website about how to make your own kit. We found out that a lot of people just wanted to buy it because it was easier. So you can get this test kit from a lot of beekeeping suppliers and from Michigan State and University of Minnesota bookstores. So there's a video that shows how to do the powdered sugar roll online. The University of Minnesota Bee Lab put together a bunch of videos last year about how to do a powdered sugar roll. So if you haven't done it before, I highly recommend watching a couple of videos. If you can find someone in your beekeeping club that has done the powdered sugar roll, it'd be great to do it with them first. We also recommend doing it really early in the spring so that you have some time to practice because it's a little bit more advanced to do it in the fall when you have a big population of bees and bees are robbing, and that's when really your mite numbers are super important when they're in the fall. So start early, yes?
What's your feelings on comparison between the sugar roll test and the new alcohol wash?
Yeah, yep, so we have information on that too. I haven't done, so the Varroa Easy Check, or just any alcohol wash?
No, they were paid.
Yeah.
They claim it's more accurate. It's easier because it's being barred inside of a...
Right, so there's pros and cons of each test. So the alcohol wash is known to be a little bit more accurate and it's a little bit easier different times of the year. If you're willing to do an alcohol wash, go for it. We work with some beekeepers who have a really hard time with this idea of killing a sample of 300 bees. And we know from a colony health point, it's not going to hurt the colony to kill a sample of 300 bees, right? The colony's going to be okay. But the one thing that's nice about the powdered sugar roll is that it's a non-destructive test. So basically what you're doing is you're taking a scoop of 300 bees, putting it in a jar with a screen on it, put some powdered sugar in that jar, and you leave the jar alone for 2 minutes. The powdered bees heat up, the mites start falling off of them, and then you shake the jar for a minute. Bees stay inside the jar, the powdered sugar and the mites fall out, and then at the end of the minute you use some water to dilute the powdered sugar so you can count the mites. So the downfall with the powdered sugar roll is that if the bees have a lot of nectar in their guts, sometimes they'll spread it out and will get kind of sticky and the mites don't fall off quite as well. There's also data that show that you need to be using pretty new powdered sugar. If you keep trying to use the same old bag powdered sugar, it may not be as effective. Pros and cons to both. Find something that works for you. But in both cases, normally you want about 300 bees in your sample so that you're able to, and then you divide your mite level by 3. So you report your mite levels per 100 bees. Yes?
Can you explain the alcohol wash?
Explain the alcohol wash? Yeah, so I have a slide on. There's one method that's the Varroa Easy Check. I'll get to that slide in a little bit. And that's a kit that you can buy. It's like this plastic tube. And it comes with instructions and there's videos online of how to use it. But there's also home-made ways to do it. Oh, there you go. I was wondering if the partnership has like a tutorial on it. But there's also different ways. You just need like the right size. You don't have to do the Varroa Easy Check. You can get the right size sieves. But again, normally what you're doing is you're getting about 300 bees in a jar with alcohol. You shake it for a minute, and then you're putting the bees over a sieve that allows the mites to fall through, but not the bees. And then you're rinsing, go back a few times so that you're rinsing the bees with alcohol to make sure all the mites come off.
So the bees die, right?
The bees die, yep. So that's alcohol wash, yep, yes.
For an alcohol source,
we heard people use windshield washer fluid. Effective? Not?
The Varroa AZ check says it is effective, and I think it depends on which kind of windshield wiper fluid you use. Like one of the temperature ones is better than the other one. You have to read the label.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I like that idea because like I have windshield wiper fluid.
The winter windshield washer fluid works really well.
What's that?
The winter formula.
The winter formula, okay.
Works better.
Which is good because that's the kind we all have, right? It's probably harder in those southern states. Yes.
What does 300 bees look
What does 300 bees look like? It's 100 milliliters, or about half a cup if the bees are top tapped down. So, if you get the kit, it'll have a scoop on it with the 100 milliliter line, so you can fill that scoop up with bees. But one problem is that sometimes beekeepers don't have enough bees in their sample, and so they say, oh, I only had 2 mites, but if it's 2 mites per 100 bees or 2 mites for 300 bees, that's a pretty big difference.
So the easy way to do it is if you have a winter dead out, collect 300 bees, put them in a jar, put a marker line, and that will be your sample for going forward.
You can do it on
And so that's a really good idea. One thing though is that the live bees and the dead bees, they kind of pack down differently in the tip top.
So it kind of gives you a sample. You don't have to be 300 all the time, you just want to be consistent when you do it. You don't want 100 or 400.
Yes?
Speaking on dead out, is there a way to test your dead bees from a dead out for mite level that you could kind of use that here?
Is there a way to test? Yeah, is there a way to test your dead outs for mite levels? That's what you guys would.
Just saw a video on YouTube. They used the Easy Check. Grab it, wash them off, and they came up with like 25 bees per 100, or 25 mites per 100.
I know that sometimes people will send samples to the USDA of dead bees, and then they're able to quantify the Varroa levels.
I always
We do more emergency response.
in a dead out. I always look at just bottom board debris and see, see is there a pile of mites? Just kind of looking for those context clues. So I would think they would tend to drop off once the bee dies, but I don't know definitively yet.
Yeah, and so some people will send samples to the USDA for diagnostic services for why their bees died. All right. So one thing that we're really excited about is we made an app for mite check. So if you haven't done mite check, or if you have and you still want to just be really cool and have the app on your phone, you can get it. It's for Android or for iPhones on the Apple Store, on Google Play. If you search mite check, it should come up. We just brought it out of test mode. But this has been this partnership with lots of different universities and organizations of trying to provide more resources to beekeepers to be able to monitor for Varroa. Is anyone going to sell it right now? So we can do there's a fun activity to do so. Alright, so I'll pull it up. So if you want to join in, it'd be cool. Start downloading it now, and I'll talk a little bit about the app. But there are a few different benefits of having the mite on your phone. The mite check on your phone. You can report your mite counts to mite check, which I'll talk about. There's also tutorials, so it'll walk you through the different steps of doing a powdered sugar roll, and we're going to add on there how to the steps for doing an alcohol wash. So that's upcoming. And there's also a shake trainer, which we'll talk about. It also allows you to tag your data for your geographic location, and also report your mite practices. So you could say, okay, here are the mite levels I got, this is what I plan to do, or how I plan to treat, and it goes back into this national reporting center and allows us to learn better from each other. So we have videos on how to do the powdered sugar roll. If you're in the yard and you're like, I kind of don't remember how to do this, you can watch the video on the app. There's also a step-by-step guide that's written out instructions on how to do a test. Some issues with some powdered sugar roll are that beekeepers don't shake hard enough and don't shake long enough. So they're doing the test right, they might have 300 bees in their sample, but if you're not shaking hard enough, you might be missing mites, and then you might not be making the best decisions about management because you think your mite levels are lower than they really are. So we put into here a shake simulator that shows, instructs you how hard you should be shaking. This is the mite check map. It shows the highest level of mites reported at the county level. So I feel like Southern Wisconsin could be much better represented than Gratton. For a while, it was just Minnesota and Michigan that were really rolling it out, so it looked like we were the epicenter of the mite problems because we were the only ones on the map. We've done a lot better participation now. And so it reports at the county level, so your neighbor isn't necessarily going to know that it's you with the highest mite levels, but it's one way for us to share information, participate in citizen science, and then also remind beekeepers about horizontal transmission and how we have to take mites seriously. And this is part of the Informed Partnership as well as some of the universities. So future things that are going to happen in the app are that we're going to interpret the survey results. There's going to be more data to beekeepers. We're going to be building some reminder systems. So it says, hey, it's been a while since you tested for mites. Here's a reminder. They're talking about making games and stuff on there. Like, so stay tuned. It's very high tech and very fancy. And then we're also going to include more alcohol wash information. Does anyone want to try the shake trainer? You're just going to make me do it by myself?
Anybody know the password for the building?
Oh, for the Wi-Fi?
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't.
Okay,
I don't think so.
So, you got it? Yeah! Alright, so if you got the tutorial, so if you go to the bottom where it says tutorial, and then you swipe, you go at the bottom where it's my guys, and then you swipe 7 times, and then there's the shake trainer, and so it's a minute, because that's how long you're supposed to shake. Let's see if you can hear. If you have an iPhone, the ringer has to be on. Okay, so start. So let's see, I'm not shaking right now. So I'm here to show. Hear it? Shake harder. Shake harder. And then sometimes it'll say, shake faster. And sometimes it'll say, you could do better. So there's a lot of feedback from the staff. But it's pretty much shake. And especially if you're talking to bee clubs and trying to get people to learn how to shake for Varroa. It's a good tool and it's kind of fun. It's really exciting when you actually get a good job from this because it's very high standard. Not hearing anyone else give feedback. Anyone get any feedback? Shake harder. Good job. Good job. You probably have to email someone who can ask like the video for the how to do a product trigger roll.
Oh, she got that.
Yeah.
Harder and harder.
Right. So this is available on YouTube. So how to do product trigger roll is available on YouTube. You can also email and ask them to send you the file so you can embed it in a PowerPoint. There's a little compatibility issue here, but I have it on my computer, so if anyone wants to see the video here today, I'm happy to show you. We can also just find it on YouTube if you go to University of Minnesota UW. They got really into making videos about powder trigger roll, so there's like your standard 3-minute video that has everything you need to know. And then my co-worker who has her Master's of Fine Arts and also like really awesome violinist, they got her to play the Game of Thrones theme song. And the apiary in the mic check. There's also one where we have this yard where there's a lot of gnomes in it, like gnome statues, and so they have this like introduction to the gnomes during mic check. Basically just like trying to do like kind of quirky stuff to get you to watch a video about how to sing. We're trying really hard. Alright. So anyways, you can see a lot of different organizations and universities are working on this mic check stuff because we recognize how important it is for beekeepers to be sampling regularly.
Get rid of a cup of coffee.
This is the Varroa Easy Check that we were talking about. So this is one tool for doing an alcohol wash. It does kill 300 bees. We talk about killing 300 bees like taking a blood sample, right? So if you take a blood sample, it's not going to kill you. Take 300 bees and kill them for a mic check, it's not going to kill your colony. Some people are kind of hesitant. I think if you can get over that hesitancy and do an alcohol wash, that's really great. And your numbers might be a little bit more accurate, especially if you're sampling at a time with a high nectar flow when bees have a lot of nectar. So we talk about, for when we do integrated pest management, perfect number that's going to work for every yard and every time of the year. It's really, really, really important that you follow the label. The label for pesticide or for miticide is the law, so if you don't follow the label, you're not following the law. And also, you really want to take your own physical safety into consideration, and some of these treatments can be harmful to you, so you need to wear a respirator, make sure you wear a respirator. And then sometimes too, like we talk about this fall spike of Varroa mites, but oftentimes you might have a spike in the spring, and spring's a really good opportunity to get your mite levels as low as you can before that honey flow starts. So take mites really seriously in the spring as well. Katie Lee, who's just got her PhD out of the University of Minnesota Bee Lab, her thesis research shows how just even a small number of mites in the spring can lead to really high levels in the fall, and colonies not being viable enough to even go to almonds for pollination. So that data those data are unpublished right now, so you can kind of keep your eye out for them. But basically, she's saying like make sure that you keep your mite levels really low in the spring. Otherwise, we see from the data that your colonies won't look very good in the fall. So sometimes people watch us do this powdered sugar roll video, and they're like, okay, what if I just say that I don't treat my colonies, but can I skip this monitoring because this looks like a lot of work and sticky? And the answer is no. Like that's not that's not the best way to try to manage your Varroa. Varroa cycles can vary from year to year. Over-treatment can be really hard on your bees. It can be expensive. Some Varroa treatments contaminate the comb and build up in the comb. Over-treatment can lead to resistance to certain miticides, and then you might miss a spike in Varroa if you don't monitor. So we recommend, especially if you're a small-scale beekeeper, make your management decisions off of your test results. Don't just guess about when you should be putting your miticide in your colony. So I'm going to show you some data from some colonies that we ran at the University of Minnesota. So we got 8 packaged colonies. Tim said I could share that they're from Gratton. Look how, so these are the Varroa levels in May and June. All 0. So like these packaged colonies had really low mite levels to start out the year, right? And then we sampled them once a month. This was part of the Beekeeper Partnership Sentinel Apiary program. So once per month we go and we take notes about queen status, colony size. We'd send a sample of 300 bees back to the University of Maryland lab. So these were alcohol wash tests. They would analyze, use their machines at the lab to give us back information on our mite levels and our nosema levels. And so we were able to really compare. In 2017, we did this in 3 yards. The data all look pretty similar. In this yard, we had no mites in May and June, no detectable mites. That means that mites are in the colony, but they're really, really low level. July, we had one colony spike up from 0 to 7%. So if you're thinking about 300 bees, that's 21 mites per 300 bees, 7 per 100. So this lightning bolt means that we put a treatment on it. So we treated this colony number 8, at the end of July. And then the next month, we had high mite levels in a lot of our colonies in August. We treated the end of August. That treatment doesn't look like we got great knockdown from that treatment. We used mitoid strips for all of these treatments. We treated again at the end of September because mites were still high. And we had pretty good control going in October. So there was one colony at 5% and the rest were under 1%. So that shows kind of our seasonal trend on 2017. Yes?
Treating all of the colonies is a very
So are we treating all the colonies in the apiary or just the colonies that are high? We're treating, so with the exception of the 7% one, that one we just treated that colony. The other times we treated the whole yard. And normally the best practice is if you have a colony that's over threshold, you treat the whole yard for mites. So that's a really good question. Yes?
So how do you explain the treatment in August, that's super simple, that's the best practice, effective going into September. Is that because there's some cotton going on late in August?
Yeah, so what does the August treatment look like at work? So there's a few different questions about that. One is that the colony is really, really big at that point of the year in Minnesota in August. And so we don't know what it would have looked like if we hadn't done the August treatment. Maybe mite levels would have been much higher in September if we hadn't done the August treatment, and the August treatment just kind of didn't take mite levels where they were. would follow up at the end of the season with an oxalic acid discount. So I just want you to think about for this, remembering that question of can I just skip monitoring and just treat? Okay, so 2017 we have high levels in August and September. So if we were to make our management decisions off of this year's data, we would treat maybe end of September, right? So last year we had 7 sentinel apiaries that we treated all the same situation. 8 packet colonies, all hive on foundation in 7 different locations, and we saw mite levels spike way later in the year. So May, June, July, August, they all were pretty low. August, we treated at the end of August because we had, one mite level, one colony that was at the threshold. September mite levels were really low again, so we were feeling pretty good. And then all of a sudden, October, we had a huge spike in mites. So if we hadn't taken those October samples, or if we had assumed that our mite cycle would be the same as the year before, we would have made some pretty bad decisions about when to put treatment on. So, what management options can we consider? When we talk about integrated pest management, we don't think of just applying chemicals, we try to think of other ways that we can control our pests. So control our pests in general. So one way of controlling pests is biological control. And so with biological control, you're trying to think, okay, is there a predator that I can release that's going to kill this pest? Obviously, there's been times where that's gone really poorly for people. Like, you don't want to just start introducing one species because it's going to kill a pest, because that can have unintended consequences. And maybe that predator will take over and be a different pest or something else. So this is something that is part of the integrated pest management theory, but a lot of research goes on to decide whether or not you want to use the biological control. You don't want to just introduce species, right? So there is some research going on right now about biological control for Varroa mites. This is not to tell you that you should do it. I don't think it's not something that we recommend, but I want you to just see that researchers are trying to think of other ways to control Varroa mites. So there's this mite that's a native mite and it's used to control fungus gnats and thrips. And so there's some researchers that were looking and saying, okay, what would this do to Varroa? So they tried it in the lab and they found, okay, it's feeding on the Varroa, but okay, it's also eating the beaver, like it's attacking the egg. So not a great sign, but this is why we do research, right? So we can learn. And they also tried in the hive, and they still didn't see the same kind of effects on the brood. But they also saw that this predatory mite was only attacking the Varroa mites that had fallen onto the bees, not the mites that were on the bees. So this is not a treatment recommendation, but just as part of the puzzle is researchers looking at different ways to control mites, not just through chemicals, but through other ways. Another way is genetic control, trying to figure out resistance to mites. And there are several bee breeding programs in the United States that are trying to develop lines of bees that are more able to resist mites. So in Purdue University, they have the mite biters, or sometimes they were called the ankle biters, even though mites don't have ankles. And so these bees had a genetic tendency where they would chew at the little legs of the mite, and then they'd fall off more easily. So they're working to make a line of bees that has this genetic tendency, so they're better able to groom off mites. We know some kinds of honeybees, like Africanized honeybees, are better at grooming mites off each other, and so we're trying to figure out how can we have bees that are better at grooming mites. The Baton Rouge lab, USDA lab, is working on a line called Varroa sensitive honeybees. So these bees are able to oftentimes detect mites that are developing brood, and they'll interrupt the brood cycle. So if there's a mite reproducing on a pupa, the adult bees will chew off that and uncap that cell, and that interrupts the mite reproduction cycle. So that's pretty cool. And then the University of Minnesota just started a new bee breeding line, and they're looking for propolis collection. Do you all know what propolis is? The resins that bees bring in? And for a while, a lot of Marlis research has been about the health benefits of propolis. So the beekeepers is kind of annoying, right? It's like never ever gets out of your clothes when someone has a trick that I haven't figured out. And it's really sticky. But for a while, we thought bees just kind of used to seal off their hives and kind of make it more waterproof. But that propolis has a lot of antimicrobial properties, and there's a lot of immune and health benefits out of resin. For example, we're really used to using these hives with these really smooth flat walls, right? And maybe it's better for bees if we use rough wood, because then the bees have more cracks and nooks to put propolis in. And if we can get our bees to put more propolis in the hive, that can have some benefits for their immune systems. So she's developing a line where the bees will hopefully collect more propolis that will also have hygienic behavior. So that's similar to the Varroa sensitive hygiene, where Varroa sensitive hygiene is kind of a subset of hygienic. It's where the bees will detect if there's diseased brood and pull it out. And you want bees that are really hygienic because they're interrupting the disease cycle. And then also bees that just naturally have a low level of Varroa. So some of these lines you can buy kind of bigger queens or get bees from someone who's gotten bees from someone who's gotten bees from these labs. The Minnesota lab is pretty new. They're in their second year this year. So we get this question a lot of like, okay, so I'm a backyard beekeeper and I want to be treatment free. I don't want any chemicals on. And this way I'll kind of make my own line of bees that are resistant to Varroa, right? And if we could do that, we would. That would be awesome if you could just say, okay, I'm going to have my bees, and some of them will survive, and that survivor stock is going to be the best bees ever. It's been made without Varroa. But it's unfortunately, outside of the big bee breeding programs, it's really hard to develop your own line of Varroa resistance. So even if you do have this colony that's really good at maintaining low mite levels, that colony is still susceptible to horizontal transmission. So even if it has all the right genetic tendencies, you still need to control for horizontal transmission because that colony can be wiped out. Another thing is that when you're doing a bee line or a bee breeding program, you really need to take into account the drones, right? So for bee breeding programs, they'll artificially inseminate bees, or they'll have isolated yards like on islands, so that they're able to control the genes versus on both sides. So another thing is honeybees, remember, are native to the Americas. They were introduced, so they have a pest that's also introduced. So there's a lot of times people think, okay, bees know how to do bees, I'll just leave them alone and let them be. But in very few parts of the United States, we have healthy bees. Sorry, very few areas. Sorry, most parts of the United States, we do not have healthy feral colonies. So even if we might have bees in a tree, oftentimes those colonies aren't going to be very healthy because a year or two they aren't going to be treated for Varroa mites and might die. So sometimes people have bees in a tree and maybe new swarms are moving into that tree every year or every other year, but we don't have really very healthy populations of bees that can survive in most parts of the United States without management. There are a couple of parts of the United States, so I know upstate New York, parts of California, where there are feral colonies, and those colonies are pretty spread out from each other, and so that's probably kind of help them reach an equilibrium with Varroa. But in most parts of the United States, we have too many bees close to each other for them to grow that equilibrium. So our honeybees in our areas need beekeepers to intervene and monitor their pests and manage their another integrated pest management approach is to have a mechanical or physical control. So that's when you're making the environment suitable for pests. So one thing that you can do is, when you crack open your boxes, you have all that drone brood, and you see the mites, you can clean out that drone brood. That's an example of a mechanical or physical control, but it's not enough to be effective in keeping your mite levels down. It's just something else that you can do in addition to your other strategies. Regular control is another example of how we control pests, and that means that there's federal state law that tries to limit the introduction of a pest. We don't have that for Varroa because we already have Varroa here, but there's another mite in Asia called Belli ABF that is, from what I hear, way worse than Varroa. A lot of beekeepers say it's just a matter of time before it's introduced here, but it's something that luckily hasn't been detected in the United States. So right now, we're not able to move colonies across borders because there's a quarantine and we're trying to prevent the Belli ABF mite from entering the United States. We are able to import some queens and drone semen so that we can improve our stock, but we aren't able to move our colonies. Cultural control reduces pest establishment, reproduction, about yard density. How close are your yards, or how close is your yard to other yards? Again, more bees in the area means that there's more opportunity for transmission. So I might have to respond and keep my levels lower. Think about your location. Location's important too, because some areas of the United States have very different virus levels and lows. And talking with your local beekeeping club is a really good way to kind of see what beekeepers do and what's effective for them. And then think about how your neighbors are managing. You know, someone down the road doesn't really control their mites. You'll have to be really proactive in sampling through. Another thing you want to think about is your time of year. And so this means like, okay, in the spring you really want to keep your mite levels as low as possible. In the fall we expect to see mite levels, and we also want to keep those mite levels low because those bees are going to winter. Temperatures, a lot of our mite treatments have temperature recommendations on or requirements on the label. And remember, the label is a lot. Sometimes if you're applying your treatment outside of those temperature range, either it's going to be way too hard on the bees that we're going to kill those family or the queen, or it's not going to be effective. So you need to make sure that you're applying the miticide at the right temperature. You also want to think about your size of your colony. Larger colonies are often more tolerant to mite treatments, but they also might not get the treatment might not get every mite, so you might want to go back and check and see if you need to apply another treatment. How often do you do the treatment? So that's a really good question, and that depends on the treatment, and each treatment will say how often you do it. Honey supers, there are very few mite treatments that are allowed with honey supers because we don't want to contaminate our honey. So you want to pay special attention to that. We don't want beekeepers to have a bad reputation of having chemicals in our honey. And then also thinking about your own management philosophy strategy, thinking about what's important to you. Also thinking about this mite spike. Remember, trying to anticipate. You don't want to let your mite levels get really high and then treat. You want to treat right before those mite levels spike up, right? Because at that point, if your mite levels spike, then your virus loads also spike, and it's harder to get those bees. Here are the treatments that are approved. The Minnesota Bee Lab recommends only organic treatments. There are some benefits of organic treatments. For formic acid and oxalic acid, those aren't known to build up in the comb, so that's kind of nice. And also, bees are less likely, or mites are less likely to develop resistance to organic treatments. In the northern areas, in our temperature area, we have more opportunities to use more organic treatments because we have these windows of time where we can use formic acid. You can't use formic acid if the daytime high is above 85 degrees for the first 3 days of treatment. So in the middle and south part of the United States, it's really hard for them to find windows. Different organic acids, there's also essential oil treatments. And then there's also synthetic treatments, which plenty of beekeepers use. Apivar, Checkamite, I'll talk about a few of those in a minute. And then also the treatment options that you can consider are drone brood removal, brood interruption, and recruiting. And so that's basically trying to think of, so drone brood removal we talked about, attracting the mites to the drone brood and then removing the drone brood. Brood interruption helps to interrupt the mites from reproducing, and then recleaning, you can reclean with stock that's more tolerant of mites and better at keeping mite levels down. So there are resistance concerns to some of the synthetic treatments, especially with bottom tube check mite and Apistan. Those have a lot of resistance concerns. Apivar, we've seen some resistance concerns, but not as many. But it's something that you want to think about as far as using those treatments, maybe changing up your treatment, right? So if you're going to use a synthetic treatment, don't only use the same synthetic treatment every time, because then you're allowing the mites that survive and are resistant to that treatment to survive, and then those are the mites that are reproducing. So that's one way that we can lead to resistance in our mites. So if you're going to use a synthetic treatment, we recommend changing up your treatment and not using the same treatment. All right. I have a lot of resources for y'all because mite treatment is something that we really are paying attention to. So, Michigan State has a website, pollinators at MSU.edu. We have a a lot of information on there, including this series, www.beekeepersalive.org, and that's also part of Michigan State's website. And they have a series about keeping bees alive. So Megan Milbrack, who's PhD at Michigan State, goes through these webinars where she'll have talk number one about why do my bees die, and she talks about what death by Varroa looks like, understanding Varroa risk, and making a plan for the Varroa mite. So if you're part of the bee club, this is maybe a good thing to share on Facebook, especially if you're getting these questions a lot. The University of Minnesota Bee Lab is really into social media. So they're on Facebook, websites, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Here's our YouTube channel where we have a lot of those tutorials on how to check for mites. Here's our website. The University of Minnesota has a pest and disease manual online. It's free. You can download the PDF. As I mentioned, the University of Minnesota prefers organic treatment, so they'll talk about that philosophy and those reasons, but that's part of their suggestions for managing growth. The Honeybee Health Coalition is an awesome resource. So they also have a free download PDF guide that you can download, and they go through every treatment, not just the organic ones, but look for organic, synthetic, and even some non-chemical treatments. And for each treatment, they'll talk about, okay, how do you do it? What's the formulation? How effective is it? Can you use it with honey supers? What are the advantages and disadvantages? So it's a really, really helpful guide. They also have videos on their website of how to apply each treatment, because you remember you really want to think about your own personal safety when you're putting out treatments. Some treatments don't have very many safety concerns and stuff. You really need to make sure you're not doing that. Honeybee Health Coalition also recently put out a Varroa management tool. This is brand new, so I'm guessing most people haven't seen it. But it walks you through, it says, these questions, and it will say, first question is, do your Varroa mite level exceed the treatment threshold? And so they're kind of relying on you to have developed your own treatment threshold, but they also have some treatment thresholds there that will link to some suggestions. And so if you say, no, my levels are under my threshold, it'll say, okay, here's some ways to prevent mite growth. So maybe using a screen latticework or calling drone brood, instructing the brood pattern, requeening. But then if you say, yes, my levels are under the threshold, it'll say, okay, are you open to synthetic and organic treatments or just organic? It's brood tested. Is honey supers on, and is your colony population increasing at the peak or decreasing? And so then based on those questions, it'll tell you which mite treatments are available for you to use. So this is another really good tool if you need to treat but you don't know what your options are. The Beekeeper Partnership collects data. This is about colony loss. I realize Wisconsin and Michigan are doing much better than Minnesota. We're lagging behind. The more orange colors mean that more colonies are lost. That survey is going to be available in the spring. It's really a good thing. More beekeepers can participate in the survey and report their data. It helps us when we're explaining beekeeping trends or when bee researchers are looking for grant funding to be able to know what our colony loss levels are like. This is the Mite Check website. So remember, Mite Check is part of that really cool app I showed you guys. And so here's where you can also report your mite levels. You can report it through the app or on the website. But again, we're just trying to engage beekeepers to report their levels and learn from each other. And finally, so we have this Pollinator Champions course for Michigan State. It's not specifically about Varroa, but it's really good for anyone who wants to be able to talk about pollinators and what's going on with them. So not just honeybees, but if you want to have a better understanding of pollination in the United States, about commercial beekeeping, about bumblebees, and the kind of overall scene of pollination, it's a good course. It's free. It takes about 5 or 6 hours to complete. It's all online. You go through the different tutorials. At the end, when you finish your talk or your course, you can either choose to pay $30, and with the $30, you're certified pollinator champion, and then you get a free PowerPoint that you can download, and you can use that PowerPoint to give talks about pollinators to other clubs or to other groups. But again, if you don't want to pay the $30, you can still take the whole course for free and educate yourself. I have information on pollinator champions and stuff. Any other questions?
Can you go back to 3 slides? Okay, so that's not free, that's for Ben. Ben, are you here?
Yep.
So what is Colorado, Washington, Nebraska doing to get such low winter cold?
It varies year to year, and honestly, with the you can get into the Data Explorer and actually look at select different metrics and see, beekeepers that traded with product A versus B lost this percent. So you really can dive in for yourself and look at that. I'm not sure specifically in those states what it is, but that information, this is kind of the overall summation of everything, and you really can get in and tease it apart and look at, well, is that explained by, hobbyists or commercial or sideline? There's a lot of resolution in how you can break it down, and you could look at, does that hold every year? If it's consistent, year after year, it may be a function of a small sample size in some states as well. So.
Yeah.
We're on all of the slides.
Yeah.
You open up a hive and it's severe.
So the question is, if you have severe uniform wing virus, what do you do with that colony? I think at this point, probably the best recommendation is to do a mite test and apply a treatment because you want to control the mites because the mites are spreading the uniform wing virus. I don't really have, if you were asking, like, should you just Yeah, so if you're taking we get this question quite a bit, there's not really a good, easy, effective way to just like kill a colony and just remain it, which may or may not want to think about. If you're shaking the bees out, I would be nervous because those bees go into another, they probably will go into another hive. Personally, I would just try to treat termites, but I also, you can talk to other people.
Any research in probiotics?
Not, there is some. I'm less familiar with the probiotic research, and I haven't seen much suggesting that. Yeah, I haven't seen much of it. I don't know. If anyone else knows too, feel free to speak up. I don't know much about probiotics. Yes.
Do we see that we're not retweeting enough? And in the fall of the year, if you get go in and requeen that hive, but give it a 2 brood race, then requeen it. So the new queen would start in the fall, start producing winter bees, would be a little more effective as an overwintering example. A lot of times, these queens that we're getting, they're just not living. They're running a gamut. They're just not.
Yeah.
I mean, it used to be you get 2 years out of a queen. Now, if you get 1 year, you're doing good.
Yeah. So a couple of things on queens. So one is Dr. Megan Milgrath at Michigan State is really pushing for northern climates to do the requeening in the late summer or early fall. One benefit is that that's when a lot of times you can get local stock, so you can get stock from bees that are really good at surviving the winters here. Another thing is that it's going to make your bees a little less likely to swarm in the spring because you put a younger queen in, and maybe help with winter survival. So that's one thing. Another thing is that Katie Lee, again out of the University of Minnesota, part of her thesis research was looking at brood patterns. Have you heard of this research? So she looked at colonies that had really awesome brood patterns. So if you looked at the sheet of brood, it was almost all just sealed brood, very few holes. And then you looked at colonies with awful brood patterns, so really spotty, maybe half sealed, half empty. And she swapped those queens because basically we're taught to see that, okay, if you have a really awesome brood pattern, that means your bee's really awesome and doing really well. And what she found was that oftentimes you switch the queens and the brood patterns wouldn't necessarily change. And so there's something else going on in the colony. It's not just about the queen. Oftentimes the egg pattern, they would measure egg pattern, was really good. But then there was something affecting the development of those eggs and larvae so that the seals grew, they weren't all developing. So that research is published, it's newly published. So yeah, there's a lot of questions about queens, and then we talked about supersedures and why is that happening. I think probably a lot of it has to do with just our overall pressures on bees right now. That's a good question. One more question. Oh man, I don't want to pick. And I forgot to give you guys prizes for asking good questions. Okay, Tim's gonna keep track. Okay, Tim picked the last speaker for the last question.
Last question. Go with it.
Okay.
Okay, one of your early slides indicated that Varroa only propagated on the bones of the Schnadtt. Why is that? Is that because the tubeless cycle with the Schnadtt is longer? The worker cycle of the Schnadtt is shorter than the propagator?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer. Does anyone know why mites and Beekeepers only develop in drone bird and not in worker bird?
Cell size.
Brood size? Okay.
Sure, is it because the worker cycle is too short, or is it because the drone cycle is so much longer than just
You can send me an email. I have a coworker who works with Beekeepers, so I can look into it and figure it out. That's a really good question, and now I'm really curious.
Next part.
Part two.
Kind of relates to Tim's question over there in the formed ways. So we know that the Varroa vectors diseases can be, once the bee is infected with one of these 50-some-odd diseases that are available to them now, do the diseases spread from bee to bee, or is it only when the mite actually infects the bee?
So the question is, are the viruses spreading through just the mites or also from bee to bee, right? And so they can, I think it depends a little bit on the virus. The viruses can spread from bees to bee without the mites, but oftentimes the viruses are multiplying in the mites, so the virus titers are higher when they're spread by Varroa. So oftentimes, depending on the virus, if it's spread by Varroa, it's a lot more virulent than if it's just spread bee to bee.
Okay, so then if it's spread by Varroa, it's restricted to the bees that the Varroa are, the bees that Varroa are common.
Right. Or it's not restricted, so it still can be spread from bee to bee, but the more virulent is spread via the Varroa.
And then the last thing is there's something now called the mite thermal treatment. It's a heat treatment that raises the temperature of a hive,
Right. So University of Minnesota UW has tried these strains where they heat up, and they're supposed to this magical temperature where it's just hot enough that it kills the mites, but it doesn't kill the bee brood. They haven't had success getting into it. Other beekeepers have, especially in Europe. So it's in development. There's research going on, but it's not something that's really proven or easier figured out yet.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your question. Okay, so we are going to take a 5-minute break. Okay, and let everybody get the restroom, stretch their legs, get another cup of coffee. I switched the coffee pots around. We'll be having somebody leave in just a minute to go grab pizza. Is Hannah here yet? Okay, great. If you want to come up here and we'll get set up. But take about a 5, maybe 10-minute break. We'll get Hannah set up. We'll come back. Hannah needs to okay. They miss a treatment window. The weather changes. We're a week later getting the second treatment in. Different factors, it happens, okay? A lot of the treatments that we use are temperature sensitive. Forecast changes by 5 or 10 degrees, and it can have a big effect on your bees. So those kind of things happen. I can also tell from some of the questions about how do I do a powdered sugar shake? How do I do an alcohol wash? And some of you aren't familiar with some of the testing methods. So like she said, if you will just Google or look at YouTube and search for powdered sugar shake or alcohol wash from Varroa, you'll see oodles of videos. You can tell the ones that are homemade, which some of them are great. You can tell the ones that are professionally done, that are very detailed. Please look into that, okay? The Wisconsin honey producers on our website, wihoney.org, Kent and several others worked with the state to put together a best practices for Varroa management in Wisconsin. I believe that's the title, right?
Yes.
Maybe I got a word out of order. But if you'll go to the website and go under the resources tab, it will lead you to that link. And a lot of the information that Anna shared with you is there. The Honeybee Health Coalition is a great resource for looking at different treatments or different time frames, different times of the season, things like that. So please look into that. And again, this is why we're networking. Don't be afraid to ask somebody. And what I really want to drive home to you is it all depends on you and your neighbor. I always tell people community treatment is very important. How you manage your single hive can impact other honeybees in a radius around that hive by 5 miles or more. Now, how is that true? Well, if your hive can at times forage up to 5 miles if it needs to, well, guess what a hive 10 miles away can be doing? Foraging up to 5 miles away. So now the radius of your hive overlaps with the radius, foraging radius of that hive, and now hives that are 7, 8, 10 miles away, some of those bees could be interacting during robbing season, during foraging season, when things are a little bit slimmer and the bees have to go further looking for it. So, like Anna asked, is anybody living on an island? I don't believe so. Okay, you might think you are, but we are in a very concentrated part of the country. Northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin, a lot of beehives that you know about and a lot you don't know about. So think about that, get to know your fellow beekeepers, and think about community treatment. Test monthly, okay? If you don't know when to start in May, okay? Just pick a day and start. Test, like she said, after you treat. Does anybody remember? It was on the screen. You'll see it in all the literature. What's the kind of magic threshold number? We're looking at Varroa mites per 100 bees. So what's the magic number above which you better be thinking about treatment? 3. Okay?
I meant to mention that. I think we're moving more towards lowering that threshold.
Yeah. So here's what I do personally. Because sometimes I don't shake for 60 seconds. Sometimes I don't shake hard enough. I may not qualify on the shake app or whatever. And so I always just conservatively say, you know what? If I add 1 to my number, where am I? So if I'm getting 0, 1, I'm feeling pretty good. But if I'm getting 2 and 3, I'm already thinking there's probably a few that I'm not shaking off. Okay? And so I know I'm over that number. Here's what you're going to find in August, folks. If you're a beekeeper and you've been doing this a while, you're going to get 7, 9, 17, 13. Even in hives that have those lower numbers, like she was showing you on the chart, there is a natural spike. And so if that's the first time you ever test for Varroa, you're going to be overwhelmed. And remember, you're shooting for a 300 bee sample. The bigger the sample size, the more accurate from the brood nest. Not from your honey super, not from the entrance of the hive where it's easy. Get them from the brood nest. Be a little difficult. I love what she said. Start practicing in the spring so that you can just practice the whole routine of setting up your stuff, because it can be a little cumbersome. You're in a bee suit. You're not used to this. If you wait until the fall when there's 70,000 bees in a hive with 3 brood boxes, you just take all the honey supers off, the bees are a little more grumpy. Trust me, you'll be fumbling around. So get used to it. Get a system down, all right? And test after you treat. If you find that you need to treat, test afterwards to make sure your treatment was effective. I usually say within a week or 2. Okay, maybe the next day or 2 may be too soon. It depends on the treatment and when that treatment's efficacy is at its greatest, when you're getting the biggest mite drop. A lot of people just think a sticky board is the way to go. A sticky board is a great thing to use in the first few days after you apply a treatment because you can see a huge mite drop onto it, knowing that, hey, I got a lot. But then do your sugar shake or your alcohol wash, I'd say a week or two after. Dan, is there a set time that you usually tell guys?
It varies depending on the treatment, but yeah, I think you're given enough time to run its course.
Yeah,
So
let the treatment work and then come back and check. Okay? Because you got to remember, where do these the Varroa spend most of their time? In the brood cells. So some of the treatments, most of them aren't killing the ones under those brood cappings. So a week, 2 weeks later, you got another population of mites out and about. And then backyard breeding programs. I get this all the time. As somebody who distributes a lot of bees from Georgia and California, we work with about 13, 14 different breeders. All of the breeders that we use are imploring, some of the VSH and Minnesota hygienic stock, those kind of things into their breeding programs, their breeder queens. But I always get these questions from smaller beekeepers. Well, I'm going to not treat because I'm going to try to find a bee that'll work for this area that's resistant to Varroa. You really need to understand what you're talking about, because are you in control of the drones? Are you in control of your neighbors? And are you really going to be able to do that? Just understand what all is involved. It's not that simple. Okay? With that, did anybody else, we'll take a minute or two, anybody else have any key points or one last burning question? If not, then maybe catch Anna before she leaves. If she's heading down the hallway, don't be like holding her up because they got to get on the road and head north. So, okay? Thanks again to her coming. Now, our next presenter is Hannah Gainsday from the Gratton Lab, University of Wisconsin, and she is going to talk to us about some current and upcoming research on honeybees here in Wisconsin, which is applicable to you guys in Northern Illinois as well. So with that, we're going to turn everything over to Hannah. Thank you for coming.
Thanks everyone for having me today. Can you hear me in the back? Great. So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit in my presentation because I have some handouts. So one thing I'd like to do, sort of a next step in my research, is collect citizen science data. And so I have two sort of programs to tell you about. One is a brand new collaboration we have with Penn State, with the Center for Pollination Research at Penn State, with Christina Grosinger, and it's a program called Beescape. And so right now it's in Pennsylvania, Illinois, and Indiana, and we just joined up with them, and we're hoping by the end of 2019 this will also be in Wisconsin. And so basically what Beescape does is it lets you map where your hives are, and it extracts land cover data, pesticide use data, and uses some modeling practices that we've developed over the past few years to tell you what is the forage like in your landscape, what is the pesticide load like in your landscape, and then we can use that to predict the success of the hives. So, like I said, it's not in Wisconsin yet, but we'll hopefully have it soon. If you're interested in learning more about it and being kept up to date, I'm going to pass this around. You can put your name and email address, and I'll take this at the end. And so to get this website to really work well, we need data from beekeepers so that we know if our models are accurately predicting the success of your hives. So hopefully starting next year, we'll be able to start collecting data in this Beescape website from beekeepers. This is just showing you a little bit about this is what it looks like when you log in. It'll show you a map. You click where your hive is, and then this is just showing, this is a land cover layer, so you can click on that and tell you what the different land cover types are around your hive. For the time being, this is not, like I said, it's not in Wisconsin yet. So for the time being, I have a data sheet. So if you're interested in contributing some data about your 2017-18 hive success, I'm going to pass this around to you. You don't need to give this back to me today. You can send it back to me if you're interested. This is basically, I'm interested in looking at across Wisconsin, can we use landscape to predict how well your hives will do? So the information that's collecting is the location of your hive, your overwintering losses from last year, and then how you do this past summer. So right now, we're not exactly sure how well it predicts because it's at the county level, and so at the local scale, it might not be as relevant. But we're hoping to be able to use that county level data that's available to the public to use in predictions of regulations. So the question is, are we picking up pesticides from corn and cotton? That's what this the pesticide layer does. It reports how much of the corn, for example, in this county was treated with certain pesticides, and then we use that information based on the application. Does that answer your question? Yeah, the comment was they had a fill out from fungicide application in their area, their area in New York. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Are you guys tracking herbicides as well?
So the database that we have focuses on insecticides, but research is showing that fungicides, for example, are pretty bad for bees, and herbicides also they're finding that are also directly. So I think we're going to try to figure out how to pull in some of that other data as well. Okay. So, and I'm happy to answer more questions about those data collection things as we go. So feel free to ask me questions about that as we go. As you are all aware, bees are very important. So 85% of all flowering plants and about 35% of crop plants require insect pollination. And bees are the most important pollinators providing that service. So another way of looking at this is saying that 1 in every 3 bites you eat is dependent on pollinators. And this is directly, so things like almonds, blueberries, apples, fruits that require insect pollination, but also things that indirectly require pollination, like dairy and meat, because the animals producing the dairy or meat are eating crops that require pollination, like alfalfa. And then there's an ad campaign a few years ago that I really like that I think really illustrates this dependence on pollinators medicine. So this is a photograph of a produce department in a grocery store of what it looks like with pollinators. And then what they did is they went through the produce section and removed everything that requires pollinators. And that's what your choices would look like without pollinators. So I think it's a pretty good visual representation of how important bees are for our food system. And honeybees are vital to modern agricultural systems. So there are a number of reasons why current modern agricultural practices really depend on honeybees. Without honeybees, our current agricultural system would fall apart. So the reasons that honeybees are vital for this system is, first of all, they're generalist pollinators. So honeybees will visit lots and lots of different types of flowers. So they're not picky about what flowers they're visiting. They're relatively easy to manage. They live in boxes. You can pick them up, put them wherever you want, shoot them. They're easy to track. And then this works really well with modern agricultural systems. So you pick up the boxes and put them in the moving crop field when you need them. In systems like almond, for example, there's miles and miles of almond, and for the rest of the year, there's very little forage available for the bees. And so if the bees were there all year, they wouldn't do well. But with modern beekeeping practices, you can just pick them up and put them where you want. When the flowers are done, you move them somewhere else. But wild bees are also important crop pollinators. So for the past 15 years, I've been doing pollinator research, and I've mainly been focusing on the wild pollinators. There's some research showing that wild pollinators sometimes are providing the majority of the crop pollination services, but also that wild pollinators and honeybees often work well together. So honeybees might pollinate at certain times of day or in certain weather conditions, and the wild bees might pollinate at other times of day or in other weather conditions. So they work really well together. And there are 20,000 species of wild bees in the world, 4,000 species found in North America and about 500 species found in Wisconsin. This slide just shows you a little bit of the diversity of the wild bees. And then just a couple of differences between wild bees and honeybees. Wild bees are mainly solitary, so there's no colony, there's no hive, there's no queen. It's an individual female with an individual nest, and most of them live in the ground. Their holes look almost like ant holes, and there'll be one female who lives in that nest. As I mentioned, there's a huge diversity of wild bees in North America. We only have one species of honeybee that we depend on. And then a lot of the wild bees are actually specialized pollinators. So my favorite species of bee is the squash bee, Pepinatus fruitosa, and they specialize in squash cucurbits, so pumpkins, squashes, cucumbers. And so if you have an apple orchard, that type of bee wouldn't really be very useful for you for apple pollination. But as you're also probably aware, pollinators have experienced declines in the last 20 years. This is true for both wild pollinators and for the managed honeybees. We don't know the exact causes of decline, but there are a number of factors that we believe are responsible for the decline. So that includes pathogens and parasites. So Varroa mite is the biggest one that you know, but there are others. Pesticide exposure in our agricultural landscapes, and then loss of flowers from the landscape. And this is something that I think we don't think about as much, the changing in our agricultural landscape, but it's possibly one of those most important factors because the floral resources of the landscape, that's what the bees are eating. And so as roundup ready crops have increased and the weedy floral species in field edges and roadside ditches have gone away, the bees have less to eat and a less diverse diet. And that's had a pretty significant effect on the health of the bees. And so the focus of my research is looking at how local and landscape level habitat influences wild managed pollinators, mainly in agricultural landscapes. Those are supposed to be shifted a little. I'm not sure what happened. But so when I say local habitat, I'm talking about at the farm scale, so the field level, what is the floral resources like in the actual farm field where the target crop needs to be pollinated. And then the landscape scale, I'm talking about more of a range of 1 to 3 miles around the farm or around the apiary. And what does the type of habitat and arrangement of that habitat look like, and how does that influence the behavior and community of pollinators you find in an agricultural system. So I'm going to go through a couple of studies that I've done over the past years here in Wisconsin. The first one I'm going to talk about is looking at apple pollinators, and we're looking at how local floral resources in the orchard influences the pollinator behavior and the pollination services the growers are receiving. The second study I'm going to talk about is working with Wisconsin cranberry growers, and this was mainly looking at how landscape level natural habitat influences the community of wild pollinators in the cranberry marshes, as well as the effectiveness of honeybees to pollinate the cranberry. And the final study I'm going to talk about is my current research, which is looking at how the landscape surrounding commercial bee yards influences hive success in southern Wisconsin. So the first study is, I mentioned, with apple growers. And we're looking at both managed and wild pollinators. A little bit of context for this study. The apple growers, some of them keep their orchard sort of like a golf course. They like to get rid of all of the dandelions, either mow or herbicide, removing all of the dandelions in the understory because they're afraid that the bees are going to the dandelion instead of the apple. Other apple growers don't seem to care too much about what the understory looks like, and others would like to keep it clean, but it's a busy time of year in the spring when the dandelions are coming out, and they don't have a chance to. So what they want to know is, how is the presence of these dandelions influencing their apple pollination? And so in particular, we're talking about the management of dandelions in the understory. There are other flowers that could be in the understory, but blooming at the same time as apple. So this study was a 2-year study done at 24 orchards in southern Wisconsin. And at each orchard we had 2 treatment blocks. So on the left here we have our no-mow treatment, where we asked them not to mow or herbicide during the duration of the study to let the dandelions be at whatever the level of dandelions in that orchard would be normally. And then we had a mow treatment, where we asked them to mow as often as they could during apple bloom to keep the dandelion levels low. We then went and did observations of pollinator visits. So we did timed observations in the orchards during bloom and recorded how many wild bees and how many honeybees we had and how many non-bees we had visiting the apple blossoms in a 5-minute observation period per transect. After bloom was over, just after petal fall, we went and we measured early fruit set. So these are the little fruitlets you get right after the petals fall off. We would have liked to measure something more closely related to like actual yield, but apple growers in Wisconsin pretty much all use a chemical thinner, and so they come through and spray the trees that cause the small fruits to fall off because they don't want more than 1 or 2 of these fruits to develop per cluster, and so the final yield numbers won't relate well to their pollination levels because they've gone through and artificially removed flowers that could have been, fruit that could have been fully pollinated. So I'm going to show you a couple of graphs here. We have on the bottom axis is the number of dandelions per square meter, and on the y-axis is the visitation rate. So in this case, it's the number of honeybees per minute. And what we found was that as the number of dandelions increased, the number of honeybees visiting apple blossoms also increased. When we look at wild bees, although the number of bees visiting per minute, the density of wild bees is much lower than the honeybees, we found the same relationship. So as the number of dandelions in the understory increased, the number of wild bees visiting the apple blossoms also increased. And so, if anything, the dandelions are making the orchard more attractive for the bees and bringing more bees into the orchard rather than distracting them from the apples. And then when we looked at fruit set, we didn't find any relationship between the dandelion density and the fruit set. I think apple is an extremely complicated system, and there's so many different variables that play into fruit set and yield that I think that's one reason why we didn't find a relationship here. The other reason is apple bloom is really, really short, and so we had like a 5 to 7 day window to collect all of our data on visitation rate, and so that very small snapshot on visitation by the bees might not be enough to really give us the information we need. So, yes?
Do you have any data on the varieties of the apples? Because like a Macintosh will bloom the first, and then all the different varieties along, in about a 3-week period, you'll get fresh blossoms from all of the apples, not just on the honeycrisp.
Yep. So that's a great question. You said A asked about information on the varieties of apples because they sort of have a different bloom period for different varieties. And we do. The first year we were trying to get sort of diversity of what we looked at. So we visited all sorts of different varieties. And then the second year we decided in order to keep the variation as small as possible, we focused only on honeycrisp. The other issue we had with the different varieties, we wanted the same variety across orchards so we could compare. So we used Mac and Portland, we tried to use Mac and Portland. But the size of the trees and the ages of the trees are hugely different across the orchard. And so with honeycrisp, they're much more similar from orchard to orchard. So we felt like focusing just on honeycrisp was a way to reduce the variability due to other factors. And so our take home from this study was that the bees are definitely responding to local availability of floral resources. The more resources we had, the more bees we had in the orchard. So the next study I'm going to tell you about was my dissertation work with cranberry growers. I initially started this study interested in how the landscape influences the wild pollinators in the cranberry marsh. And so to do this part of the study, I set out pan traps. That's what these, they're on the upper left here. It's a plastic beer cup sprayed with a fluorescent paint, and so it's sort of a floral mimic. So to the bees, it looks like a flower, and that's why they go to it. And we set these down in the cranberry marshes during cranberry bloom to collect bees that are visiting the flowers as well. We then took the samples out of those traps and pinned them all and identified the new species. The sites where I had these traps, I worked with about 50 growers over 4 years of the study. And the sites fell on a gradient of very high woodland and very low woodland in the surrounding landscape around the cranberry marsh. So this is an aerial photo of a cranberry marsh, and this would be one of my lower woodland sites. And what we found was more woodland in the surrounding landscape resulted in a more abundant and more diverse wild bee community in the cranberry marsh. We found approximately 200 species of wild bees in just in cranberry, which we were pretty impressed by, because cranberry seems like it's such a, it's grown in huge fields, and you wouldn't think that there'd be that many species just in one crop. But while I was working with the cranberry growers, they kept asking me about honeybees. I tell them what I found with wild bees, and they say, yeah, that's nice, but what about the honeybees? How many hives should we bring? What's the best number of hives to bring to increase our cranberry yield? It's like, well, I don't know. So I figured out sort of the data that I wanted to, the data I felt I needed to give them the answer to that question. And luckily, cranberry growers keep amazing records. And so I collected data from 50 cranberry growers for 10 years on their cranberry yields and the number of hives per acre they had each of those years. And so this figure, I'm going to show you this figure a few times. On the bottom axis is the number of honeybee hives per acre. On the y-axis is their yield in barrels per acre. And I just want you to take a minute and look at that relationship. Maybe talk to your neighbor, say what you think you see there. Does anyone want to share what patterns they think they see here? So when we first looked at this data, we said, what's the relationship between the two variables? And what we found was there's a significant relationship. So it looks like it's increasing. We don't know what the maximum number should be here, but it looks like there's a pretty significant relationship between hives and yield. So the more hives you bring, the higher your yield is going to be. But since I'm always thinking about the landscape, I was like, well, maybe this is different depending on what the landscape is like around your marsh. But there's not a lot of work that looks at how landscape influences honeybees or influences the use of honeybees in agricultural systems. So there wasn't a lot of previous work to go from. So what I did is I overlaid the surrounding landscape. So I looked at I categorized the marshes high woodland or low woodland, and this figure shows you the hollow circles are low woodland, and the solid circles are high woodland sites. And what we found was there's a very strong relationship between hives and yield when you have a low woodland landscape. So when your marshes sit in the landscape with not a lot of natural wooded habitat, you have a very strong relationship. But when you're in a landscape that's mostly woodland, there is no relationship between yield and hives per acre. So pretty much those cranberry growers don't really need to bring honeybees because the honeybees aren't giving them any boost to yield at all. I presented all of this data to the cranberry growers several times, and none of them will just get rid of their bees for me to do another study. But I'm pretty convinced that if they're in highway units, it looks like they probably don't need to be bringing honeybees. I don't have it in yeah.
Is that because there's so many other pollinators there that they're already achieving that pollination rate that gives them yield need provide no additional benefit?
So that's a great question. I think there's a few things going on. There could be, but we know there are more wild pollinators from the survey I did. But the yield levels, I mean, so there's no difference here. If they have zero hives per acre, there's no difference between local hives and non-yield. But I think what's probably happening is the honeybees are just going elsewhere. So cranberry isn't an especially attractive, rewarding crop for bees. And so I think the honeybees are probably going just to other flowers in the landscape. I should have included this slide in the presentation today, but what I did with this data is I created a map of central Wisconsin of all of the cranberry marshes to show which marshes could benefit from bees and which ones probably don't need to worry about honeybees. So there are a lot of marshes in central Wisconsin that should be bringing honeybees and could be seeing a really good yield boost from honeybees, but there are also a lot out there that don't seem to be benefiting from honeybees. So I was showing that map to another beekeeper, and he was excited about that. He's like, oh, so I can use this to find cranberry growers who really should increase their number of honeybee hives, and I can bring more hives to them. So I'm trying to think of how I can use that map for commercial beekeepers as well. Okay, so from my work in the cranberries, we found that wild bees and honeybees are also responding to landscape level habitat surrounding the marshes. And more woodland resulted in more abundant and diverse wild bee communities, but more woodland also, I say up here fewer honeybees in the crop. We don't actually know what the bees are doing, but it appears that they're probably not in the crop. Okay, so from these two studies, we show that the wild and managed bees are responding to local and landscape level habitat availability or floral resources. Well, what does this mean for beekeepers? So up until last year, I had really been focusing mainly on wild bees, and this past year I started a new project with commercial beekeepers, looking at how surrounding landscape influences their hive success. So this is sort of the beescape that I handed around and the citizen science data sheet I handed around is sort of building off of this current research that I have going on, where I focused on a very small part of the state around a lot of hives. So this is 2018 was the first year of a 2-year study working with commercial beekeepers. My field sites were in southwest Wisconsin from about Austin down to Darlington. I selected the field sites based on the surrounding landscape, so I've got a full gradient of woodland, agriculture, and grassland with all of my sites, and I selected them so that those 3 variables are not directly correlated. So if my woodland and agriculture are always correlated, and I found patterns, I couldn't say if that pattern is because there's high woodland or low agriculture. And so hopefully the way that I chose my sites, I'll have sites that fall in different gradients of all of the land cover types that aren't directly correlated with each other. So I had 90 hives that I monitored over last summer, 45 bee yards, so 2 hives per yard were monitored. And I was trying to look at honey production and survival. To do this, I used a hive scale called Broodminder. This is a local company in Stoughton. I meant to bring one and I left it on my desk, but it's a scale about this big, and you set it under the hive and it records hourly data on the hive weight. So I had one scale under each of the hives, and then up here these are temperature and humidity sensors, and I had 2 of those per hive. So they go inside the hive above the brood boxes. So here, there's one here and one here. The temperature data is, we don't quite know how we're going to use the temperature and humidity data yet, but the temperature data is really pretty flies or something going on with the colony, that temperature will go outside of 92, 98. So you can look at this data and use it as sort of a management tool. Oh, there might be something going on with that hive, maybe I'll take a look at it. So what does the data look like that we get out of these sensors? So all summer I had these 95 sensors. These sensors are Bluetooth, so I go out every few weeks and connect my phone to the sensor and extract the data off the sensor. And then it makes these nice output graphs. So this is data that's taken once per hour, as I said, and then this is average for daily weight data. So this graph shows you the data from one site, so two hives are at one site. The greenish yellow line was one hive, and then the blue line was the second hive. And you can see that the blue line, the blue scale, the hive didn't do very well. The hive just didn't produce honey this year. And then you can see on the greenish line, this is where the beekeeper harvested. So that was the thing that we harvested on that hive. This is what the temperature data looks like. And as I mentioned, this is the 92 to 98 degree Bristol, and this hive looks like it was pretty healthy. Queens laying the workers are keeping the do you have a question? And so I'm still kind of working with the data. By the end of the summer, I had over 1 million pieces of data from all of these sensors collecting data once per hour. So I've been working with the data scientists and trying to just get the data into a format that I can really work with. But for today, what I'm going to show you is just the figure is going to show you the variation in hive weight over the course of the season. So on the bottom axis, we have the month, this time, and on the y-axis, we have the percent change in weight compared to the initial start weight. So we had some issues with our scales because of the way I set them up, that the actual weight it gives me isn't the actual weight that the hive is, but we can look at the change in weight, and the change in weight is accurate. So the dark line in each of these figures shows you the average for that region. So I split it up between north and south because I work with two beekeepers. One beekeeper is in the north, one is in the south. And the southern site looks like this. So how does honey production or weight change vary as a function of the surrounding landscape? So I think I'm almost ready to look at this. I'm still trying to get my data in the right format. But this is ultimately like what I'd like to see. And then we'd like to sort of grade the different landscapes so that we can tell beekeepers, this is the type of landscape to look for. This type of landscape, you can expect your bees to do better than this type of landscape, for example. So another piece of data I collected when I was out there was looking at mortality rates. So we have the productivity of the hives is an important variable for beekeepers, but also whether or not the hives survive or not. And so at the end of the season, each of the bee yards I worked at, I was monitoring 2 hives, but they each had 24 to 40 hives in each yard. And so on my last visit, I counted how many dead outs they had at each site. And so with this, we can plot this against the landscape. And what we see is the mortality rate was different between the 2 regions. This could be, we're not sure if this is a regional effect or a beekeeper effect because those 2 variables are confounded. But what we can also see is there seem to be relationships with the landscape and mortality rate. So in both the north and the south, as the amount of woodland, so that's the green bar, as the amount of woodland increases, the mortality rate decreases. So again, it seems that something about the more natural wooded landscape is better for the bees, and the beekeepers were experiencing lower mortality rates overall at those yards. So the take-home message from my research so far is that wildly managed bees are both responding to local and landscape level resources or habitat. The landscape around your hive is important. I heard I wasn't here for the previous talk, but in the summary, that this is important for disease management too, and Varroa management as well. So there seems to be a lot of things about the landscape that could be important for the health and survival of your honeybees. But which also has my contact information.
Raise your hand if you want a card.
So you're talking, you seem to feature woodland and agriculture land. How does that apply to an urban beekeeper?
That's a great question. So you said, I think folks on woodland and agriculture, how does that apply for an urban beekeeper? I'm not sure. We were going to have another gradient in this study of urban, but the urban beekeeper we're going to want to involve all those hives. So I think with the urban, obviously if there are more flowers, then it'll be better than if there's fewer flowers. So if it's your hive is surrounded by concrete, it will be a very good place for it.
Yeah, see, I mean, because in New York, they're pulling a bunch of hives off of skyscrapers, and even in London, they're doing hives out of all these buildings. And so, I mean, I guess if you were in an industrial area where there is no landscaping, you really see a difference. But it's hard to, that's got to be hard to quantify.
So there's been some work in Europe at honeybees, and they found that urban honeybees were healthier than agricultural honeybees because they have lower exposure to chemicals. There's also been some work in Chicago looking at like community gardens in the city and rooftop gardens. I'm not, I haven't read all of that literature, but I mean, it's the same as some of the resources. So if you have more resources, I think this is going to be fine. We weren't able to do that in our city.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah. Yep. Yes. So the question is, does the low woodland also correlate with low, I mean, does high woodland correlate with low pesticide exposure? Probably, and that's why I'm really excited about the Beescape collaboration, because I think we're going to start being able to get into more details about the pesticide loads. I'm going to, the sites that I had last year, I'm going to put those into the Beescape mapping system soon, so that we can start looking at those things when we get those maps up.
You go back to today's graph of always 5 or 6. So the percentage weight change was all the stuff down to the lower line. Do you know anything about how the hives are managed? I mean, is that situation where you've got that temperature graph and maybe more than the
Yes, the question is about the lines that all fall below the, all lose weight for the whole season, right? Yeah, and so some of those hives died. The management should all be the same for all the hives in the north and the south. So it shouldn't be a management application. But I also, another piece of data I didn't show, I had one site where I monitored 10 hives with sensors and humidity. 4 of the hives didn't gain any weight, and 6 of the hives produced tons of honey. And they all started as packages, last year in the exact same location. And so there seems to be, there's a lot of variation that isn't landscape. So it's trying to get the landscape effect is challenging when you know there's all of this other variation between hives.
Why did the grassland line go up in the southern and down in the northern? Or?
There's a bunch of grass up there.
Yeah, so the question is, why is the grassland line opposite directions for north and south? I think it could be a few things. One, it could be that the gradient of grassland is different in the north and the south, and maybe there just isn't as much grassland in the north. But also, the grassland might be different types of grassland. So in the south, grassland might be pastured, and in the north, northern area, grassland might be more like restored prairie. So I need to look more into that, but that's a great question.
How can you judge how much pesticide you need in urban areas?
The question is, how do you judge pesticide use in urban areas? I guess you have to use a proxy. There are a couple of things you can do. You could use a proxy for pesticide use by looking at like pesticide sales for homeowner use type things. Or you could look at the pollen coming back and look at pesticide loads in the beehive itself.
Yeah, for the most part, you know, farmers and stuff like that, I mean, they take it serious and they try to use the bee-friendly pesticides and things like that, but homeowners sure don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're blasting their lawns with stuff that will kill everything.
Yeah.
And you don't know who and how many are doing it in any one neighborhood.
Yep, that's a great one.
It could also be the city, depending on what municipality is using to treat their green spaces.
So what you're saying is the urban area has less pesticide problem?
The question is, does urban have less pesticide problem than rural? I have that in my study. The study of honeycomb was done in Europe, and that's what they found. Yep, so this Beescape website is going to allow you to put a dot right on that point, and it'll tell you what the floral resources should be based on the satellite extracted land cover.
I was just wondering if there's any data out there for that new and upcoming crop called hemp. Do the bees work in hemp?
I'm sorry.
Do the bees work hemp?
Oh,
Hemp.
I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think it's probably, but yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure.
I can say there's studies that are coming out that say, yeah, they're highly attracted to it, and others say when there's other stuff around, they're not. So I think it depends. I think there's going to be a lot of research, probably mostly anecdotal. It's going to be occurring over the next few years with hemp and CBD and honeybee.
THC, yeah, THC.
So I can speak on this a little bit because I had beehives on the same property where I was grown this year. And I didn't do a 5-minute observation, but when I walked by the hemp field, I looked to see if I could see any honeybees on the hemp. And maybe it was just the time of day or that the time of flowering. I didn't see, it wasn't like I could hear a buzzing with this bunch of honeybees in the hemp field. Other trees that were flowering on the same property, there were, when they were flowering, buzzing huge crowds of bees. So I don't think that
that hemp is necessarily as attractive as some of the flowering stuff. That's what I've been looking at.
You were just flying higher.
Any other questions for Hannah? Any other questions? All right, thank you, Hannah. Okay, so I want to hit on some high points from Hannah's discussion while we're waiting on the pizza to get here, and then we'll talk about how we're going to do that, okay? She kind of ended up with the urban versus rural. There were a couple of questions. That's a big debate. Which are better? Which is a better landscape for the bees? And some of Hannah's future research will probably let us know about that. But remember, it's going to vary significantly from municipality to municipality, and out in the country from farmer to farmer. Okay, I know that from personal experience. You got one farmer that always calls, "Hey, I'm getting ready to spray. This is what I'm going to spray with. Is it going to affect your bees?" Others, a week later, you see them at church or in the store. "Hey, I sprayed that field with such and such. Did it kill your bees?" So communication is key. I mean, it's much easier, I think, in a rural setting to communicate with 3 or 4 farmers in a 5-mile radius than in an urban area. Marson probably has to communicate with 10,000 people, within a few miles when you have bees. So you got to think about that. I mean, there's going to be a lot of factors within urban versus rural. So a lot of good research opportunities there. Hannah pointed on how vital honeybees are as pollinators. And when you are speaking to people about bees, when you're educating people about bees, pollination should probably be the first thing that comes out of your mouth when you talk about the benefits of bees. Because we always think honey and stings, right? Well, the pollination is so much more vital and crucial, and that's what makes honeybees such an important part. Because as she mentioned, they're manageable and they're movable. Okay, we can move them around when there's concentrated sources of things that need to be pollinated. I liked hearing that there are many cases where honeybees are beneficial to intermix with native pollinators, because there's some research out there and some saying, well, no, the honeybees are out competing our native pollinators, and in some cases there are. So we need to know that, recognize it, know when to say when with our honeybees in certain landscapes. I loved hearing about dandelions and apple orchards. I love seeing dandelions in people's yards. You come and pick up your bees from my place, you're going to see lots of dandelions. I don't like to spray for them, and I encourage you, if you're a beekeeper, stop spraying for them. And if you get your neighbors to stop spraying for them, then everybody's yard looks the same. They're beautiful when they're yellow. They're horrible looking when they, headed out with a little head. But then the kids just love to blow those things. Just always make sure they're blowing them more towards your neighbors. And I want to give you a little personal story here on that. You can go online, and I'm sorry I don't know the name of it, but maybe Dan does. The Bee Informed Partnership and the Almond Board out in California did a collaborative project with some beekeepers and almond growers. And what they said was, hey, you guys understand very little about each other. You know that you need each other, but you don't understand what's going on in that tree, in the root system, and in that beehive. How can we help? So what they did is a good buddy of mine, Russell Highcomb Honeybees out in California, he was one of the beekeepers, and then I can't remember the name of the almond company or the grower, but what they did was they planted mustard varieties in the rows between the almond trees, okay? And, Russell loved that because then it gave the bees that were there or nearby an earlier food source waiting on those almonds to bloom. And then if there was downtime or something, a disruption in the bloom, the bees had something else. And of course the almond managers had to mow that a couple times a year, but they were looking at when to mow, when not to mow. So it kind of paralleled what she was finding with the dandelions. They were seeing a benefit. And the almond growers were like, well, hey, if we can benefit the bees that are here and help the bees do a better job of pollinating our almonds, we'll do it. I mean, they got money to spare. So if you YouTube, do you know the name of that?
Bee Integrated Project.
The Bee Integrated Project?
Yeah.
Okay, so YouTube that. It's, what is it, like a 20-minute video, or maybe it's even longer?
Yeah.
25 minutes. Great little video to watch, okay? Really cool. Talks about that and all. I like what she found with more woodlands means more diversity of species of bees. More woodlands, maybe less honeybees. Why is that? Personally, I think from experience, those bees are probably going something to something that's a little more attractive to them at the time than the cranberries. And we can use that kind of research to talk with the cranberry growers and with the beekeepers. It may make it a little bit easier to convince some to put more bees there, or less bees in one spot, more a few miles away where there's more open landscape. So just great information for the beekeeper and the cranberry grower. I like that. And again, there's a slight correlation with woodland areas equaling lower mortality. One thing that I saw, she already took the slides down, but do you guys remember, and this may have just been coincidental, but I'm hearing it more and more, when she was showing the graphs on the hive weight, did anybody notice when the peak was on the hive weight in both the northern and southern? Mid-July. Okay, and then it started doing this. It started falling off. Folks, everybody waits till August and September to take your honey off, okay? Two things going against you there. Your bees are eating a lot of your honey, which is fine if you don't want to feed them as much. But if you're trying to get a honey crop, they're eating a lot of it and you're feeding them back. Secondly, you can get started on your queen assessment and your late summer, fall mite treatments earlier, more easily when you don't have honey supers there. So I know commercial beekeepers that have drawn a line in the sand and they said into the third week of July, we're taking honey off. But most of us want to wait until the, second week of August, into August, because we're going to get one more super of honey, right? This past year and the year before, with all the rain in August and September, raise your hand if you were one of the ones that you thought you had honey to harvest off of your 2 hives. You did 2 weeks earlier, and you went out there 2 weeks later, and there were only a few frames left because you had 70,000 bees that were stuck indoors while it was raining, and they did what? They ate all the honey in the soup. Okay, so keep that in mind. That was just maybe something coincidental, but mid-July, you may want to start pulling your supers. Wally here, he pulls supers as they get full. How many of you do that? That's probably the smartest thing to do, because then it's yours, not theirs, right? But it's not practical for everybody, depending on the number of hives you have. Another thing was in that same topic was when she was showing the graph about the changes in hive weight, pounds. It went from like 0 up to like 200. There was a green graph that was going up, but it was doing this. And I found that very interesting because it shows you that even as the bees were making honey during the honey flow leading up to mid-July, there were drops. I looked at it closely. There were drops in that increase of sometimes 20 pounds. Okay, so hives are fluctuating as bees get stuck in for a day or two. They're not making honey, they're eating honey. And then when they get a few days to go forage, then they can make up for it and then make them a surplus. So please realize that. Yeah.
Could that mean that they're bringing in nectar and then they're drying it down?
Yeah, absolutely. But some of absolutely. But some of the changes I was looking at them were 25-pound changes in a short period of time. And I think that's probably more to do with the weather we've had the last couple of years, where we get 2 straight days of rain, and then we get 3 straight days of good weather and more rain. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes out again as future research. The landscape thing is very practical for us as beekeepers, and knowing when we're looking at putting everything on our side, from mortality to honey production, knowing where we need to put our bees. And then I think it's going to be good. So again, let's give her a hand. And just so you know, the Wisconsin honey producers, we are going to be supporting some of the research that Hannah's doing. And so I would encourage you to be a part of us so we can help her. Okay? So pizza is here. Thank you to Scott Wecker for going and getting that. We have 10 cheese pizzas, 10 pepperoni pizzas, and 10 sausage pizzas. The pizza is $1 a slice. I figured it to where, based on who's here, the number of people, you should easily have 3 pieces of pizza each. Okay, I would encourage you to start with 2. Just make sure, like, don't get 8 to begin with. Don't take a whole box. Take it. But it's $1 a slice, and then the drinks are over here. Carrie, stand up, Carrie. Everybody, Carrie Sipanuski. She's going to be taking your money. Okay? She counts on the high side. I told her. So what it looks like, you might count and tell you got 4 pieces when you only have 1. That's fine. That's what I told her to do.
That's okay. Should I roll it up a little bit more?
So you're taping the whole thing then?
What?
Are you taping the whole thing today?
Yeah. Promise list.
So we're going to start the afternoon session. This is only going to be about an hour. I'm going to talk for a few minutes, then we're going to do a quick beekeeper panel discussion. I'm going to bring up a couple other beekeepers, and the floor will be open for everybody to just ask questions. And I named it in the program, what's working for you and your bees. And so it's an opportunity for you guys to ask questions, and then one of us 3 or all of us will kind of answer based on what has worked for us and our bees, and maybe it hasn't worked. Your question may not even, we may be struggling with that too. So it's just going to be a good opportunity for us to all share information, and hopefully you get a chance to ask some questions that maybe you've had. Okay? With that being said, I want to start the afternoon off with a statement that's going to alarm some of you, but I want to go into great detail. Bees like to die. Okay, you're all like, yeah, right. Okay, especially, I sell bees, so I'm going to be pushing that. Before I even got into the business of selling bees, I was born into a business that sold bees, so bees like to die then when I had nothing to do with it. When I moved to Iowa in 2002 to go to school, and then when I moved back there to live in 2005, 2005. I met a beekeeper who ended up being my neighbor who ran 300 colonies, and he overwintered in 1.5-story configuration. Okay, and most years he would lose, he'd say around 20%, 25%. He'd make a good honey crop, plan on replacing his losses with his splits, but every few years he'd have a big loss. Okay, and then that's when he'd have to buy bees. And that's where a lot of sideliners are, guys that run 100, 200, 300. You usually can have enough to overwinter to make up your losses, or you have to maybe supplement those losses with buying bees. But his favorite phrase, he taught a bee class over there, and my son started going with me. We would go and speak at his class. He would always tell his new students, bees like to die. They'd ask the question, why? He'd go, bees just like to die. And he had been keeping bees his whole life in Iowa, even before Varroa. And so that was his tagline. And I was talking to somebody earlier, right before lunch, and they said that they had heard one of our, I guess you could say, better researchers here in the country use that same line. And it may be hard to swallow, but sometimes that's the reality of it. They are a domesticated livestock, in a sense. They're a managed livestock. And I like to tell people that you hear about, well, let's move towards sustainable beekeeping. Beekeeping is sustainable right now because commercial guys are out there raising bees in places where they don't have the compounded winter losses that we have. We're in a tough spot. We're in the Midwest, okay? 3 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, it was like -28, -30. 2 days later, I was teaching a bee class. There were bees flying. 48 hours later. That's the kind of stuff that when that's going on during the winter, it's really hard on a cluster trying to thermoregulate and maintain its food reserves and start brood rearing. Because when a colony starts to brood rear with longer daylight length, they have a choice to make. Okay? do we expand our brood nest? And if so, we have to do it around our food. Well, what happens when you get a 45-degree day and bees want to go on a cleansing flight, cluster breaks, and then less than 24 hours later, we're back into the single digits and sub-zero temperatures like we're going to have? I mean, that's hard. Now this cluster has to try to stay on, 4 frames rather than 2, and bees start dying. Okay, they can't do as well. Sometimes you have to get in there and manipulate, move some frames of honey around, because how many of you have had colonies that they started brooding up and they starved, but the food was 3 or 4 frames away horizontal? Well, that happens, okay? And us as managers, you got to take advantage of breaks in the weather, or even, I tell people, don't go by any laws about when you can open the lid of a hive and move a frame of honey around. You have to go by laws when you take frames of brood and bees out and set them out to get chilled. But if you open the top and you see a cluster that's, on brood and using its last available honey, and there's frames of honey to the left and right, but several frames away, what's your best management strategy right then and there? Take your hive tool, take those frames of honey, and get them at least right next to the cluster. Okay? Or quickly move a frame that's got a cluster on it, break the cluster a little and drop a frame of honey in there and shut that hive back up. Okay? In addition to putting dry sugar, granular sugar, sugar blocks, fondant, all that stuff on there, that's something you can do. So keep that in mind. Don't sit back helpless, because you can be life-saving to your bees right now. There's going to be a lot of bees that die between now and April 1st. Okay? Even the ones that have made it through all this rough stuff, because now their brood rearing and food reserves are getting much lower. Keep that in mind. I also want to make this point before we start the discussion. If you're a hobbyist, and most of you are, you suffer oftentimes big losses. You lose 3 hives, that's all 3 of them. Or you only had 4 and you lost 3 of them. That's big, okay? You're not alone in this. Even commercial beekeepers lose bees. I could name for you, this year's been bad, okay, in California, and I know even a couple down south that have lost 2,000 and 3,000 colonies in their operation. Now that sounds like a lot, and it is a lot. Some of those guys only run 4,000, some of them run 7,000, some of them run 15,000 colonies. So to lose 2, 4, 6,000 colonies is quite an impact, okay? Because it means now they're having to rebuild, right? And that is a reality for some beekeepers that have not had to do that for a long time. And it's not because they're poor beekeepers, okay? It's because they've had to battle some things. In California, they were battling wildfires and air quality in late summer. Some of them couldn't bring their bees back as early as they normally do out of the Dakotas. So then they had to change their mite treatment schedules a little bit, because now they weren't treating them there, they were treating them there. And a week or 2 makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference in your 1 or 2 hives, and it makes an exponentially huge difference when you're running 10,000 hives, right? So just think about that. So these guys too, the commercial guys, they're facing challenges, and you're not alone. And they're looking for answers too. So keep that in mind. With that being said, I'm going to call up Kent Pegorsch and then John Adams, and I'm going to let Kent and John tell you a little bit about themselves in a second. I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and we're going to take some questions and answer them. I grew up in a commercial cleaning package operation down in Georgia, okay? So we didn't have these kind of winters. I've been keeping bees now in the Midwest, about 12 years in Iowa, and the last 2-3 years here in Wisconsin in these kind of winters. I've learned things that I never had to know growing up down there. I send most of my bees out to California for pollination, or else I sell them in the fall to guys that need to make up for normal summer attrition. These guys that lose 400 or 500 out of 10,000, well, they have contracts in the almonds for 10,000 hives. So they have to come up with those hives, and they can't make splits in November, so they'll buy them. So a lot of times I'll sell semi-loads of bees back to them to make up their losses. Then I don't have to manage them, and they got it. And then I'll buy again in the spring. So I manage those, and then I send a lot of the bees during the honey season to different guys who are running them on shares with me. They do the work, they're running them on their locations, and I'll manage the queens and the logistics of treatment and that kind of stuff through the honey season, then we split the crop. So I always have anywhere from 20 to 50 hives in the backyard, depending on the year, that I'll raise some queens in, make a little bit of honey for the family out of. So I just wanted to give you kind of my background. I grew up in a 7,000 hive operation, queens and packages, honey. We ran about 20,000 nukes for raising queens, and we dedicated maybe 600 of all those hives to honey production every year. That was it. It was mainly producing bees and queens. And then now I keep bees in the Midwest, send them to the West, sell them, make some honey, make some queens, do those kind of things. So that's my story. Kent, tell them about yourself.
I'm from Wapaka. This is my 43rd year keeping bees. I got, I heard about 200 colonies. I think it's going to be a little business model for myself because I like to keep bees. And my wife and I have a store, a gift store in Wapaka. It's about a 5,000 square foot gift store in an old historic building. There's 4 storefronts. One's kind of dedicated to honey and beekeeping education. So I sell almost all the honey through our store, which is kind of cool because the store is staffed 7 days a week. So I always have people there selling the honey for me, and I get to be out keeping my bees and making honey.
Hi, I'm John Adams. Not quite as large as these guys. Currently I checked on them in January. I had about 80 hives live. We do sell all of our honey. We make products from the honey, and so been doing it. I'm 4th generation, learned from my grandfather. So been in the family a little while.
And you're located where, John?
We're about 30 miles east, a little bit north and east of La Crosse.
Okay. So, with that being said, knowing a little bit about us, and you have a question, start raising your hand. Tim.
Do you treat your packages? I do. Within the first week of putting them in, I do oxalic acid vaporization on them. Just one. That first week before the brood gets capped, just to kind of check the mite population, just in case the mites on.
What do you get? Do you get it out of my truck or no?
I don't even monitor the mite drop. I just hit it with the oxalic and cross my fingers.
What's your guess?
Yeah, mites are a problem, so we do treat with them. Also.
Treat your package?
Yeah, I don't sell packages necessarily. We pretty much just restock our own.
Okay.
But I do sell for another gentleman that does definitely treat them.
Does any of you 3 guys treat them with oxytetracycline up in installation?
Treat with
oxytetracycline?
I don't. No. I don't use terramycin unless I see a problem. I don't prophylactically or proactively use terramycin. Only if needed.
Can I come in one? That one night, 3-4 years ago, I had packages. They had the high mite. You can take them out the package with animals. And they had parasitic mites and to treat them early and make them come back.
Okay.
For most of my career, I did use antibiotics every spring, just every spring, 3 times spring, 3 times fall. Last 10 years, I haven't. I've been struggling with it because I have known some beekeepers in my area, and it might be kind of what you're referring to, is that when the bees are under stress in May, you get a little bit of a drop off in the food supply, and you see European foulbrood flare up. So if you wait for it to flare up, sometimes you're too late, and you can just lose pressure from that time. I'm not doing it, but I'm really thinking about doing it. I don't like the idea of doing it, but I'm really scared of. I've seen it happen to guys around me in a bad way where they lost all their production off some guards.
European foulbrood is 7 days. If you go over by June, you wouldn't have that same mites on it, so you continue.
So I'm going to clear this up for the audience. So you got European foulbrood. Are you familiar? You can use them for swarm control. You can just even use your leftover cardboard box and make up a nuke with it during the warmer months. It'll be fine. If you're pulling frames of brooding bees, especially with eggs, let's say late April into May, as swarm control, taking some pressure off your boomer colonies, then you can let some of those turn into walk-away splits and let them raise their own queens, especially mid-May and beyond. So that's one way to raise a queen, by just moving some frames into a box and not doing anything else. You wait 4 weeks, come back, many times you'll have a queen there that's laid. And then you can use her to replace a hive that goes queenless. Or, hey, if you make a split and you start some nukes, and then, hey, you got some hives going downhill, or you need to boost them up, you can always add them back in. Pick the better of the queens, kill the worst one, transfer the new one back in. So in my bee classes, I tell people a nuke is one of the most useful things you can have in your apiary, whether you have one colony of bees or whether you have 100, okay? And a nice thing about if you just have one beehive, I don't want to expand all the equipment, but with one, a lot of times you're stuck if something happens, if it starts going downhill. But even if you just start a nuke, late in the spring or in the summer, if you start that hive new, you've always got some backup resources there to transfer back into your original parent hive. So they're very valuable to do. So good question.
I thought you were talking about nutrients.
Okay. There's great ways to keep queens on hand. And you throw some frames of eggs in there with brood bees and a frame of food in mid-May, mid-June. Most of them, if the weather's good, will have queens in them.
Especially in the fall. You see September, October, you got a hive in the fall, you got a new.
It's a lot harder to find a queen that time of the year too, unless you got one of your new hives.
And for me, it's very valuable to have. I usually keep them up to a lot older.
Then you combine them back?
And I'll just pick out, I got 20 nukes sitting around, I just figure out where I'm going to go. Make sure I got enough bees. I want to make sure I got enough bees to make it. I think that's one of the reasons that we can't winter bees is I just don't see the bees in the hives in the fall useless. And well, that's why the one for migratory guys don't have any. So bee numbers, pollen in the fall, huge. Take it as long as they can.
There was a study that came out a month or two ago talking about local queens versus regional queens and stuff. And it's just one, but I think it's going to start more of those studies. But the findings were, looking at bees even up in New York, that it was more to do with the population going into the winter. Like John was just saying, the number of bees in that hive, the fact that it was queen right, had good food reserves, and had adequate bees, a lot of bees, was the one determining factor that they came across with overwintering survivability in the Northeast, which has about the same type of winter that we have, versus where the queen came from.
Well, you're talking right now, you got bees that are falling off, they're dying, old age. So if it wasn't for the bees that were hatching October, November, some in December, you're going to make it to March. March is going to be harsh.
We've had a long winter.
Again.
Yeah.
I mean, you get them sub-zero temperatures, you lost a third of your wall of bees, that's not a lot of heat.
You gotta have critical mass to be able to thermoregulate. All right, yes ma'am. Oh, and I forgot to remind me at the end, I'll let you speak, sorry.
Great, no problem. So it sounds like when the queen starts egg laying in the spring is dictated by the light, right? So that was
2 weeks ago.
The light. Okay, so if we were going to do, let's say, an oxalic acid vaporization as your spring mite control, you're saying you use that now? Because you have to have food, right?
Yeah. So, you want to chime in on that?
You're talking about vaporization?
Vaporization?
The cluster would be too tight now.
Right.
Get the vaporization in there.
Okay.
If we talk cluster before. all covered outside.
Another thing, how many of you use oxalic acid vaporization? Okay, it can be very effective. When 10 years ago, when people first started using it, the wines and all came out, people were saying, oh, we need to do it 3 times during the brood cycle, 7 days apart. Okay, Randy Oliver did a lot of research on this, others have, and I would strongly encourage you, if you're a vaporizer, sublimator, you need to be doing it every 3 or 4 days for the course of a brood cycle to be effective. And to be honest with you, it's not as effective when there's brood in the hive as it is when the hive is broodless. Okay, that's when oxalic acid has its strength, when you can use it just one time, maybe twice, when the hive is broodless or very near broodless and most of your mites are exposed. When you have a lot of brood in the hives, it's hard to kill mites, because then you're killing a bug on a bug, but there's very few of the bugs on the bug that are in the brood of the bug. Say that 5 times fast.
So 3 to 4 days, every 3 to 4 days, sublimate for 21 days.
Yeah, instead of the 3 times, okay? And then you start getting into those, okay? And this is me just telling you. Then you start getting into the frequency that is above and beyond what is approved for use, okay? So there's a lot of stuff on Randy Oliver's website about killing bugs on bugs that deals with stuff that's not necessarily approved, but it kills bugs on bugs, okay? So there's things that you will see and hear from people individually that people like Anna Heck can't say being associated with a university, or I don't need to say as part of a organization's guidelines for treatment, right? Because they don't fall within what's approved. So you got to keep that in mind too. Just many of you are doing it the old way, and the old way wasn't really good in the first place. So when you look into the new way, understand how it really works.
With the vaporization, how hard is it actually on the bees per time that you do that?
Typically, you don't see any observable effects. And that's where the argument comes in. Is
Well,
does it
that's
affect the
like,
brood?
yeah, because I've seen where they say, well, don't do it more than once,
That's the
or
dribble.
twice a year.
That's the dribble. Huge difference. The
Well, I've seen that
dribble,
with
mixing
the-
it with the syrup, it affects their digestive system. And if you do it more than once, say like a couple weeks apart or even a few months apart, you're going to be shortening the bee's life because it's affecting their digestive system.
Will that go through a fogger too?
No, don't. Throw away the foggers. Okay? That's all internet.
So it won't go through that?
Don't do it.
No.
A vaporizer is different than a fogger. The fat bee man with his mineral oil fogger, throw that away.
There are people that are fogging oxalic acid, but there's no correlation for strength and dosing and
right.
That's what I was talking
Yeah,
about as far as the fogger with
There hasn't been enough study. I mean, we still have a lot of gray area with vaporizing and sublimating it because we can't accurately every second know exactly what the temperature is, how much of it's effective. When you put it in a fogger, then it's just like throwing it out in the room and hoping it works. So I just say don't. I would not recommend it.
Yes. You got a full dose or just one? We're going to put it in. We're the first week for the handicap food, so all the mites will be exposed to it once with so that's
So doses wise, it's still normal what you normally do for your whole county?
It's for 1 box dosage, yeah.
Okay.
It's like one.
Yeah. 1 dosage.
Yeah. And, I build, just got one of mine, I build vaporizers, and this one blows in from the box. We do it at night when all of these are old, and it's very easy for us to measure out like those 2 fruit boxes. Put 2 teaspoons in the pan, and we do mix a little water with it to get it to it vaporizes better. And when it kicks on, I mean, it squirts stuff out any corner, any little crack. It seems to be relatively effective, but it only kills what's exposed.
That's the whole point of doing it every few days, trying to, as they hatch, get them
The next round we change, we don't do times in a row.
Yeah.
Just change it. It seems to be more effective that way.
I want to elaborate too on what Kent said, the question you asked about package bees. We always get the question, should you treat the package before you install it? And a lot of you might, did anybody here do that? Okay. Well, what Kent's describing is you install the package, let them release the queen, and from the time she's released, specifically when she starts laying eggs, you have about 8 days before there's capped brood. So you have a little over a week to do a treatment, a vaporization, find the day that the weather's good, the bees are all home, do that, versus doing it right at installation or while they're still in the screen pack. Too much can go wrong. You could affect the queen acceptance, the queen release. So let her get released, start laying, know that the bees have accepted her, and then you've got days before they're capping the brood. So all those mites are exposed and you can kill them with one treatment. That makes sense?
And then you said you mix a little water with it, some acid, vapor.
Yeah, it just, I put it all in a squirt bottle, and I just shake it up. We got ours all measured out, so you can just squirt it in there. But, it seems to do a lot better job as it heats up. You think so?
Yes, I agree.
So, I mean, it just seems to do a lot better job. That's what I found out.
Any other questions?
What if 5 acres of fallow ground that you seed down into the water for honey propagation? What do you recommend?
Bird, right?
Borage.
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 Yeah, borage.
B-O-R-A-G-E.
R-E-G-E.
It flowers, I think it starts flowering in June and then it flowers through September. It just keeps getting taller and taller, puts another bud on every week. Supposedly, I got some out there, we just planted it last year. Supposedly, if a bee pulls nectar out of it on a nice day, they claim that the nectar will replenish itself in the blossom in hours. So it gives you a little longer honey crop. I'm not so sure that there's an extreme amount of nectar in the flower, but over the whole summer, it seems to add up. That's kind of what we're looking at from here on. More forage. It's very invasive. I mean, you don't want to put it in any place you don't want it. You need to have some kind of a controlling. It'll spread.
Speak over is hard to do. Consistent, speak over is great, and consistent, and we said that now, to be honest, what the Delta began out at 40 was trying to make speak over an invasive species. And Wisconsin will use trefoil and brown mesh. So maybe we won't have some it's still going to be wrong.
Like trefoil and brown mesh.
Yeah. So your question too, I often direct people, if you just go by a pollinator mix, how many were at this meeting last year when Marla Spivak spoke? Okay. She actually, in her presentation, talked about, they did some studies up at University of Minnesota on what honeybees were attracted to. And a lot of the native pollinator mixes, well, they're for native bees. Honeybees like to go to a congested, very condensed source of nectar that they like. Native bees like to bounce around. One plant here, they like to fly over there 20 feet. So that's why native prairies have a dispersal of different things running. Honeybees, for you to be really effective at giving them a lot, it needs to be a very condensed source of something they like. They don't like to go 20 feet. They like to go 2 feet, 2 inches. Boom, 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 and be able to get a lot and then go home. So there are specific mixes out there. The Bee and Butterfly Project.org, Project Apis M. You're writing this down. Those are places where you can get mixes to plant on fallow ground that have proven to be more beneficial to honeybees. and also monarch butterflies and some native bees, but they're specific for honeybees. Okay? Whereas if you just go to the seed co-op and say, I want a pollinator mix, you may be getting something that's more of a native prairie mix, and it looks beautiful and it's great for the native bees, but it may not be benefiting your hive of bees. So keep that in mind.
I would also suggest that you plant trees. Trees will bloom for 20 years. Your pollinator mix, you might get 2 or 3 years out of it. Whereas if you plant like a little leaf linden tree, good honey crop for the bees, and they'll last a whole lot longer by planting trees.
Good point, Bill. Trees. Yep.
And another thing that people really especially overlook with trees is that's your first pollen source in the spring. Before the dandelions come up, before anything else, there's birch, willow, everything's out blooming. So trees are really, really overlooked and very beneficial.
Yeah, good point. So you could even think about, taking that 5 acres and planting it in trees and then planting borage or sweet clover underneath it. And then you're maximizing your space. Because 5 acres is a lot, but it's not. So you want to maximize that usage. So trees and plants you can do. So, yeah. Question back there.
I collected some information, but just looking at what trees to get. There's an outfit called Bee Tree Nursery. It's out of Kalamazoo, Michigan. Kalamazoo, Michigan, Bee Tree Nursery.
Okay, thank you.
Go online,
Bee Tree
it's a
Nursery.
buy from them. It points out the advantages of different trees and bushes.
Okay, thank you. Tim.
I want to go back to Dr. Sal. Yeah. When you mix it up like a paste.
Yep.
Or just like a paste.
Yep. Yep.
I assume
it doesn't.
You give it 1 gram of that paste, or you give it a little more because of the water?
It's per brood box. How you want to mix it is like 1 tablespoon per brood box. So you got 2 brood boxes, you use
Teaspoon.
tablespoon is a lot. 2 teaspoons is how we do it. And if you got a really, really booming hive, I might give it just a little bit more. But that way you're putting the right concentrate in per hive. Well, all the water's doing is just moving it up a little bit, making it easier for the plug to get it hot, so it all kind of comes up together. It'll take it about 3 minutes, and then all of a sudden it'll just blow it in. It'll take about a minute for it to finish. But and then I just plug the front of the hive. And I leave it in there. Yeah, I pull it back out, plug the front of the hive. We do it at night. All the bees are home.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, what is the best thing to use for that acetic acid? Is that the best tool to use for apply that acetic acid?
Okay.
What would that be? I mean, you just pick up a card or?
We have the stigma.
Which stick, John makes them. A lot of people make their own. You can buy, there's some out there you can buy. Most of the bee supply catalogs have them. All of them basically work. It's just a matter of, maybe there's some pros and cons. How is John, when you build them, what works best?
Well, for us, we feel that when the bees are home, it's the best. Anytime you got to tear the box down, or what we found with the pan is that it fogged more in a bee than it did fog clear the outside edges. So that's why we added a fan to it, and it was just easier at night. You can just walk up there, stick it in the front. I just got a couple little towels, just lay down on each side of it, and it plugs into like 4-wheeler pickup. I can do 25 hives on my 4-wheeler and get on it and drive away.
So what makes the fogger
Work? It's just a glow plug.
Where do we get more information on how to get them?
Where? See that lady right over there? You can get the answer from her.
All right, any other questions? We're going to take a couple more questions, and then we have to do a real quick announcement and then an election. Yes, Carl.
Plant seed before.
We have done buckwheat.
start putting,
It depends on you. Okay, if you want to make more bees and you're prepared to deal with more bees, I know guys up here who've been doing it since mid-January. Okay, so with that, if you're stimulating them early, they have to have carbohydrates, pollens, and proteins. So if you're giving them that to stimulate them, and you're stimulating brood rearing, you can be getting yourself in a bind when we have this kind of weather, but also if they run out of food. So you have to think, you can't just throw a pollen patty in there and say, oh, that's going to help me in April when I open my bees up. No, it's not that easy. So if you're going to do it, it's got to be part of the program. That's plenty. But I would put these in overwinter hives up here, starting usually in late February, early March, depending on the weather. So that wouldn't be this year. Okay, last year, we were thawed out by now. I mean, you know, there wasn't this, and we had negative stuff in the forecast the first week of March. It wasn't bad. So last year I would have been putting in pollen late February, but I was prepared to deal with it, feed us. Okay, and then in the fall, I'm watching what they're bringing in. They haven't brought in a lot of pollen, and even then, I still usually give them a little to make sure they've got enough, because that's what they're going to use early in the next spring before I give them. Okay.
What kind of pollen you find
Yeah, it's, in the fall it's typically goldenrod, aster, a little bit of thistle that's left, maybe some rotten end stuff, but primarily goldenrod.
So we're almost forced to start feeding pollen by then.
Well, most years they're getting a lot of goldenrod pollen. Last year the rain kept them back. So what do you guys do?
Well, for us, you know, you're talking mid-September, goldenrod's gone. And we just start feeding patties at that point. Let them, I want them to put on pretty much as they can, as long. Once they quit, then, you know, she decided it's done. So that's what we do. Some years we're pretty solid, and some years we don't. I mean, it's a draw. But I'll tell you what, it's a long time. If she quits, she has no more pollen at mid-September, long ways to April, May. So you need to shorten that window up, right? I think.
You're right, I think fall pollen summer and feed the fall, we'll be starting in mid-September. And then my winter bees here, I'll start feeding in March. My bees come back the end of March now, so the first thing we do is pollen summer.
I'd say this year you're talking 2 more weeks. I'm gonna guess before I should start working on it. 2 more weeks. You're talking, well, the way I do maple syrup, so I kind of watch this forecast, and once it starts bumping at 30 degrees, you know, the bees will start to think, you know, we need to maybe put a little bit of brood. It might only be just a little, a couple frames. She needs to know that it's there.
Okay, thanks guys. I'm going to let somebody come up real quick. She has an announcement. Isla Hill is going to tell you about something that's going on tomorrow, right?
Hi everyone, I'm Isla Guild. I'm with the Walworth County Beekeepers Club. But what I really do is I'm part of the hive tap room. My husband and I run the tap room. We make our own mead. So we make a session mead. It's not traditional. But the main reason I want to say I didn't talk to you guys is because going in line with what we've been talking about with planting for pollinators, we have a session tomorrow. It's the 6th of our 6 beginning beekeeping sessions. But this topic is actually planting for pollinators. So we have Larry Ziegler from the Nature Conservancy in the Quantico coming to talk about what they've been doing in the Quantico East Troy area to promote pollinator habitat, mostly for the native pollinators. But he's also going to be talking about what we can do in our communities to help foster a diversity of plant species to improve the health of all of the pollinators. So it'll be tomorrow at the Hive Top Room in East Troy. It's a free seminar from 1 to 2 p.m. and it'll be fun to see you guys there.
All right, with with that being said, we are pretty much done, and we do have to have an election. I'm going to call Kent up to do that. This is only, you can only vote, say aye or raise your hand if you are a member of the Wisconsin Honey Producers. Okay, so all you foreigners from Illinois, keep your hands down in your house. I'm just joking, y'all.
Okay, with that short and informal election here, we accept nominations from the floor. Tim was our current chairperson for this district. He did say he would accept that nomination to be chairperson again if he's voted in. So we're now having nominations for chairperson.
I second that.
Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Nominate yourself.
Move to close.
Close nominations? Second. Okay, all those in favor, any discussion? All those in favor of Tim as chairperson, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you, Kent. I want to thank everybody for coming. Despite the weather this morning, I was a little scared that we were going to get a hamper turnout, but it's a good crowd. I think we learned a lot, good speakers. That being said,